Chapter 621. Final Game. Everyone looked excited upon Barnaby's announcement. Things had gotten heated up, and there were a lot of fights still left unresolved during the game. For example, the fight between Potbull and Allaric was still undecided, which meant that the title for the strongest magnetic in all of Metropolis was still yet to be crowned. Aside from that, there were also some unresolved questions still yet to be answered. Michael's unexplained survival was one of them. Not only was Michael able to survive to the next game despite almost half of the players being eliminated, but he was also able to take on Braxton's attack head-on and somehow still remained unscathed. There were a lot of theories as to how that happened. Some thought that Braxton got uncharacteristically sloppy and accidentally missed his aim, and some thought that there were some hidden helpers that transported Michael away into safety. But in this game, all questions would finally be answered. After all, the fight for the 15 drops of Sue was a free-for-all. There were no teams, no alliances, and no groups. Michael would have to rely on himself to survive, and this time the crowd would be fully attentive to his actions. Barnaby snapped his fingers, with the magicians under his employ creating magic circles that changed the pocket dimension on the stage. The platforms briefly clasped together before separating again as the wizards finished their incantation. This time, the pocket dimension below the hole was completely different from the game before. Players and spectators alike. For this last bidding game, I have pulled out all the stops and prepared a magnificent playground for everyone to enjoy. Barnaby peered down the pocket dimension and described the rules of the game. As you can see, our new game is located on a very small island floating in the middle of the sky. This map was about 4 times smaller than the map from before, meaning that the players would be able to see each other much more frequently than before, which would lead to more fights and encounters. The objective of the game is simple. You must get to the center of the island and obtain the 15 drops of Sue located in the circle. Right in the middle of the floating island, there was a red platform with 15 pillars grouped up in the center. The players immediately noticed the individual vials on the pillars, with no locks, no cages, and no other obstacles. Allaric, Bobby, and all the other leaders of the major factions became contemplative as they realized the point of the game. Ha ha ha! You all must be aware of it now. I designed this game to be as straightforward as it can be. All players will be teleported at the edge of the island at the very same time. And at the moment you arrive in the pocket dimension, you shall run as fast as possible to the very center of the island and claim the drops of Sue as your prize. This immediately made the crowd erupt in discussions. It's just a race? Wow! There's no magnetic in the game that specializes in speed, which means that they will all arrive at the center at relatively the same time. Yeah, those 9th stage magnetics are going to be the first ones there for sure. I can only imagine what kind of chaos would erupt once they faced each other at the platform. To obtain the 15 drops of Sue on the platform, all they had to do was physically grab the vial on the pillars. That was it. The earliest bird gets the worm. But because this was everyone's objective, this meant that there would be a lot of fighting and clashes around the platform to prevent others from seizing the drops for themselves. Michael looked down at the pocket dimension and felt that this was good for him. The fact that all he had to do was grab the vial was good for him, because he could see a chance in which he could sneak at least a single bottle during the midst of the chaos. I just have to get there before the others get all of them. His speed wasn't all that great compared to the other 9th stage magnetics. Physically, they were better than him. He only had a chance if he used magic or his quantum steps. But of course, he had to spend the AP in his battery to do that, which would put him below the 300% mark, making him unable to use the quantum slash whenever he wanted. Okay, I guess I'll have to sacrifice a bit of energy to do it. I'll be able to recoup it anyway during the fight on the platform. Just as he was stretching his body, he was suddenly approached by 2 guys in black and white suits. Greetings, Sir Michael. He had never seen them before, but he knew that they were the Duchess Secret Service. I am 003, and this is my teammate 004. We are the only ones left on our team. The 2 bowed at him respectfully. They knew that Michael had a good relationship with the Duchess. Hi. Nice work you did there. I never even noticed that you guys got the flag, he said, genuinely complimenting them. Of course, if he wasn't preoccupied with Braxton, then he would have seen them with his drones. "We would like to offer you our help during this next game," 003 said, surprising Michael. "Really? Why? I thought you guys wanted the Sue drops for yourselves." 004 then pointed at the top of the auction, showing that the Duchess was looking down at them with a smile, particularly at Michael. "The Duchess has only tasked us to get the automobiles at all costs. She doesn't care about the Sue drops," 004 revealed. He was very touched after hearing that. He looked back up at the Duchess and gave her a nod of thanks, which was reciprocated by a small curtsy from the royal. "She's buttering me up." He knew that she was only doing this because she knew the value he brought to the table. His automobiles, his soda, his connection with the fairies and the dwarves. 15 drops of Sue was nothing compared to the connections he had. "Well, it's definitely working. I'll have to thank her after this." "I appreciate that," he said to 003 and 004, shaking their hands. "We must warn you that we are not capable of defeating Allaric or Potbull," 003 said, tempering Michael's expectations. "Although we are confident that we can get at least 1 drop of Sue for you. That we promise," said 004, thumping his heart. After the Secret Service's unexpected win, a lot of the teams were now extremely wary of them. Their tactics won't work a second time. "That's all right with me," he said. "All I need you to do is get my shadow clone all the way to the center of the pocket dimension, and I'll be able to teleport there." 003 and 004 nodded with seriousness. "This is great. If I believe in their skills, then they'll be able to get me at least 1 drop. But I really want more." Chapter 622. Before the race. It wasn't long before Barnaby started his countdown. "On my count, all of you will be teleported on the outskirts of the pocket dimension. As soon as that happens, the game starts and the drops of Sue are for yours to take. 10, 9, 8. While Barnaby was counting down, Michael felt another look from beside him. It was Braxton again, who was waving at him as if they were lifelong friends. The guy was mouthing some words that Michael had no interest in hearing. "I'll see you down there and we'll play." Of course, Michael had no intention of wasting his time with Braxton. Hopefully, he wouldn't get placed anywhere near the guy. 4, 3, 2, 1, go, Barnaby said, screaming to the top of his lungs. All the players surrounding the stage felt their bodies start to shimmer in and out of existence. Everyone had their stances ready, with some with their hands down on the ground and mimicking a world-class running athlete. Then finally, Michael, a surge of mana enveloped his body before he was teleported straight into the pocket dimension. 1 second, he was staring at the crowd cheering loudly at him, and the next, he was looking at a thick jungle ecosystem with the trees blocking his view of the horizon. 003 and 004 are probably already running towards the center. Since they were in the 8th stage of body formation, he was confident that they would at least keep up with the big leagues like Allaric and Potbull. I guess I should start practicing my quantum slash. That was his ace in the hole, one that he could use at an opportune moment to obtain a few more drops of Sue. He looked down at his chest and saw the 3 blocks of batteries, ready to be used. Reaching down his pockets, he retrieved his Unity Saber switch. With a single click, the Unity beam manifested in reality at near the speed of light. But just as he was about to close his eyes and concentrate, he immediately jumped backwards and dodged away from an object speeding at him directly. Braxton fell from the skies and landed face first into wet, muddy ground. Oink oink! Found you, friend. Michael frowned as he looked at Braxton's face submerged in mud. Him again? What's up with my luck today? He would have rathered that Potbull or Allaric chased after him than Braxton. This guy was just a little bit weird, but strangely not in a bad way. Braxton could have attacked him, but he sensed no hostility coming from the guy, though he was pretty sure that if he didn't dodge away, then he would get tackled into the mud with him. Why are you following me? Braxton floated up from the mud and casted a simple water magic to get the dirt and grime off his body and clothes. It's because you're like me. You're friends with mana too. He had never heard that phrasing before. Friends with mana? Yeah. Braxton nodded. Mana follows you around like you're some kind of magnet, like me. Because of his supreme skill, he had absolute control over any mana in the natural world. He could control them, he could repel them, but he wouldn't say that he could converse with them, much more be friends with them. Okay. So, Braxton frowned and crossed his arms. You're not even treating the mana like they're your friends. He raised his hands innocently. I don't know what you're talking about. His reply seemed to have frustrated Braxton. Let's see who's better friends with them between us. Let's have a battle. A mystical battle. No abilities, no divas. This actually wasn't that bad of an outcome than I thought. If he was going to fight Braxton, then this was the best condition that could have happened. Braxton beat him in cultivation, but he was absolutely better than him in magic. Alright, sure. But if I win, you'll let me leave and go for the drops. Braxton punched his own hand in excitement. Agreed. I don't care about those drops anyway. Meanwhile, the Tower Master and the rest of the wizards watching this from up above couldn't help but smack their heads in disappointment. What is Braxton doing? What does he mean he doesn't care about the drops? We do. And he says he won't use his abilities? That's his only advantage against Michael. The Tower Master could only blame himself for this. I should have been more stern with him. If he had just listened to what I had to say about Michael, then he would have known who he was going up against. Braxton raised his wand, manifesting 3 different magic circles at the same time, each one glowing with a different light. One was blue, symbolizing his mastery over the water element. The other was red, symbolizing his mastery over the fire element. And the last one was white, symbolizing his mastery over the light element. Braxton then did something that Michael had only ever seen once before. He started to maneuver the magic circles to stack upon each other, creating a new kind of depth to the magic. With a single wave of Braxton's hands, a small pig manifested from the circle, with its entire body simultaneously showing water, fire, and light elements combined to each other without any issues. What do you think? I'm the bestest friend of mana, Braxton bragged, turning up his head and showing his slight double chin. Michael was impressed. This was a new way of casting a magic spell that he had never seen before. The benefit of doing it this way is that one can ensure that the elements wouldn't clash against each other. It's a really good technique. If ChatJK5 was still active, then it would have for sure already snatched up the magic theory in a split second. But because it was still updating, he had to do it manually. If I can fully master this, then I'm pretty sure that I can finally create magic using the Unity mana. He was starting to wonder why he had only seen this now. But then he remembered that Braxton was no ordinary individual. The chubby teen was a genius from the Guild of Arcana, who could be considered as the greatest keepers of the mystic arts. This technique was probably locked in their vaults and only taught to students like Braxton. I'm going to have to visit the Guild of Arcana in the future. His only magic spell using Unity was the Unity gun. But if he could learn this stacking technique, then he could expand his repertoire endlessly. What do you think? Impressed? Braxton said with a bit of an arrogant look on his face. Yeah, actually, I am. Michael then raised his hand and manifested 4 magic circles in the air, each one having a different color than the other. It was water, earth, air, and fire, the 4 basic elements. Using the technique he saw from Braxton, he controlled the magic circles to converge upon each other, creating a stack a couple of inches in depth. As soon as Braxton saw this, his jaws dropped to the ground. Chapter 623, Braxton Higgs. Braxton was actually speechless. He tried to utter a word, but it just came out as nothing more than unintelligible grunts. He didn't know which to be surprised at, the fact that Michael had 4 element masteries, or the fact that he could do the stacking technique even though he'd only seen it once. How? That's... Even though Braxton was hailed as a once-in-a-thousand-year genius of the mystic arts, it still took him a couple of years before he mastered the technique of stacking magic circles. And even then, he was still one of the fastest people to ever learn it. But now, he was looking at a boy 3 years younger than him perform the same technique he spent years mastering. There was no way that Michael could have learned it before this. The technique was locked in their vault, and the only way one could learn it was if they were recommended by a mystic master to study at the Guild of Arcana to become a mystic master. Just then, Michael's stacked magic circles started to shake with instability. Braxton knew that this would happen. After all, Michael couldn't have grasped the magic theory without a year of learning textbooks. Still, it was very impressive that he could even stack the magic circles together. But just a couple of seconds later, the magic circles started to suck the mana in the surrounding area, using it to stabilize its structure. It was long after that did mana in the magic circle coalesce into the form of a pig, one that had a body made out of earth, a skin made out of water, flames billowing out around it, and was floating in midair. Braxton was once again speechless. He did it. Michael not only executed the technique to completion, but he also did it in the hardest way possible. The combination of the 4 basic elements, earth, water, fire, and air always resulted in an enormous explosion of mana. This was why performing the technique with those mana was almost impossible and only existed in theory. Oink! Braxton stared wide-eyed at the magnificent pig in front of him. He was completely enamored. You have 4. And just as Braxton turned around to question Michael about his talent in the mystic arts, he saw him creating a new set of magic circles in the air. And this time, the colors of these ones were completely different from the ones before. Michael was trying to create another combination of the 4 other elements: light, dark, poison, and lightning. 8 element masteries? Braxton exploded out, unable to control his surprise anymore. Michael ignored him and summoned a new pig, one that was completely the opposite of the first pig he created. It had all the elements he used combined into one, without creating any destructive reactions from the mana. I can now combine 4 elements together with this. But using all 8 and creating 8 elements is still too complicated for now. He'd have to either learn the technique from the Guild of Arcana, or ask Braxton if he knew how. Hey! I know that we're in the middle of the fight. Just as he was speaking to Braxton, the guy suddenly jumped into the 2 elemental pigs and hugged them tightly. Michael cringed away after seeing that, knowing the inevitable that would happen. As Braxton hugged the 2 piggies, the 8 elements assaulted his body, making his hair stand up on end as if he was electrocuted. Taking the full brunt of the energy, Braxton kept hugging the pigs without care, even if it was injuring him. Once the energy was depleted, the pigs dematerialized and Braxton fell to the ground, face first, with his body still smoking from being incinerated. Worth it. This guy is definitely crazy, Michael though, shaking his head. A second later, Braxton jumped up from the ground with renewed vigor. He looked at Michael with a huge smile on his face. And with a smile, Braxton opened his arms and charged at Michael, as if wanting to crush him to death. Michael immediately jumped away. Don't run away. Of course, this was just a signal for Michael to run away harder. Braxton casted a spell, creating a lasso made out of water to catch Michael before he could run away. Michael raised his hand and wrestled for control over Braxton's lasso. Just as the water lasso was catch Michael in its loop, it suddenly stopped in its tracks. It shivered for a second before reversing its trajectory and looping around Braxton instead, making him trip and lose his balance. So you can control even my own mana, Braxton bellowed out in excitement. You're the most interesting person I've ever met. Braxton broke out of his own lasso and started running towards Michael again. Please be my friend. Michael stopped in his tracks, turning around with a confused look on his face. What? Please be my friend, Braxton pleaded. In a game meant for fighting, it was really weird to hear someone say that they want to be your friend. Why? Because you can understand me. No one has ever been more talented than me, so that means we can be friends. For a brief moment, Michael saw a flash of pain in Braxton's eyes. There was loneliness in his gaze, one that he frequently saw in the mirror back in his previous life. He went silent. He completely forgot that people had different upbringings than him. When he showed off his talents, all the people around him completely supported him with praise. He also found friends and allies who accepted him for who he was. But Braxton could have lived a completely different life. He might have been outcast for being too talented in the mystic arts. He could have been bullied, ostracized, for standing head and shoulders above others, making him feel alone. So in Braxton's mind, he thought that he could only have a real friendship with someone that was much more talented than he was. That way, no one would be jealous and ruin the friendship. It was kind of sad. I guess I could be your friend. Braxton immediately perked up. Really? He then charged towards Michael, wanting a hug. Whoa, there, buddy. But it was too late. He was bear-hugged by the chubby Braxton. Can you let me go now? Braxton finally pulled away, but still had the biggest smile on his face. Now I have a friend. Michael chuckled, feeling a bit embarrassed. Braxton wasn't all that bad of a guy. The man just needed a hug. Ahem. So can I go to the center now? I still really want to get the drops. Braxton immediately nodded. Sure. As long as we're still besties after the auction. Besties? Okay, thanks. But then, a thought popped up in his head. What if he asked for a small bit of favor from Braxton? He took out a battery from his pockets and presented it to him. Can you take this and give me a little bit of your ability power? Braxton took the battery and immediately poured energy into it, without hesitation and with no questions asked. Okay, bestie. Chapter 624. Guilty as charged. 10%, 20%, 30%. Michael's eyes widened as he saw the battery's charge go up to near half in just a few seconds. He looked at Braxton, who was just giving him a nice, innocent smile like a golden retriever dog. This guy is too nice. He almost felt bad that he was taking advantage of Braxton's kindness to get more AP charge for his batteries. It didn't take a minute before the battery was fully charged, and Braxton could no longer put any more power into it. He returned it to Michael and eagerly awaited his next task. Thanks. I really appreciate this, he said genuinely. No probs. Anything for my bestie. Guilt-ridden, Michael had to promise to pay him back. I'll repay this favor some other time. No worries. I would do anything for my friends. He truly didn't want to take advantage of such an innocent kid, but he knew that he had to get as much charge as he possibly could going into this final game. He just had to pay him back with an equally worthy gift in the future. I'll have to get this guy his own mithril artifact just to get rid of this heavy feeling in my heart. Braxton immediately took in the batteries that Michael handed to him and charged it with his own ability power. It wasn't long before he had 2 fully charged batteries in his storage, bringing up his total to 500%. Aren't you getting tired? He asked Braxton. Nope, Braxton replied as he charged another battery. The energy that this little thing takes is just a small drop of my own reserves. It's nothing special, really. After hearing this, Michael didn't feel that bad anymore. For him, 100% charge was something that was more than 10 times his own ability power reserves. But for people like Braxton who were in the peak of the 9th stage body formation realm, 100% charge was like a spoonful of water against a huge lake. Here, bestie. He received the 3rd fully charged battery, giving him 6 now in total, enough for 2 quantum slashes. He gave Braxton another battery, and he began pouring in AP just like the other times. But at this moment, Michael suddenly felt a stirring in the mana around him. Sir Michael, we have arrived near the center of the pocket dimension. We have the drops of Sue in our sights. 003's voice echoed out from the shadow underneath his feet. It seemed that they had successfully found the platform containing the drops of Sue. This made his blood boil with excitement. Are there any other players near here? He asked them. Yes, Sir Michael. There are a couple of other players facing off against each other. We have remained in stealth for now, but we are sure that we would get swarmed as soon as we step close to the platform. 004 reported. From what it looks like, it seemed that there were a couple of people who had already arrived at the platform. However, they were refusing to go anywhere near it because they were afraid that they would get attacked by all the other players lying in wait. Okay, I'll be right there, he replied to them. Seeing as the game seemed to have reached a critical junction, Michael couldn't wait any longer. He had to get there now or risk someone else getting to the drops first. So, as much as he wanted to charge his batteries some more, he needed to go. Sorry, Braxton, but I gotta go. he said, taking back the battery. It only had about a 60% battery charge on it, which was more than enough for what he needed. And without further ado, he cast his shadow transportation spell. The black shadow underneath his feet expanded outwards and covered his whole body, making him switch places with the shadow clones he put with the Secret Service guys. With Michael leaving, Braxton just waved his hand goodbye. Good luck! Michael opened his eyes and found himself atop a tree, resting on a thick branch. Beside him was 003 and 004, who were staying as still as a rock and not making a sound. If he weren't looking at them directly, then they would have blended right into the leaves as if they were part of the tree. They both signaled for Michael to keep his voice low, so he nodded and opted to use hand signals to communicate with them. 003 pointed at a seemingly normal bush about 20 meters away from them. There's 2 people hiding there, 003 whispered, and 3 more hiding opposite them. 004 then pointed at a much further point in the forest, showing Michael a fight between one of Allaric's teammates and a mage. And of course, even if they didn't point towards north, Michael already noticed the platform in the very middle of the forest. In the center of a clearing, there was a red platform about 2 inches off the ground. Containing this platform were 15 pillars, which were spaced out evenly amongst each other. Michael saw the vial of Sue closest to him, and he immediately felt a temptation to just rush there and grab it before anybody could react. With his quantum step, it was more than possible. But the problem would be what came after that. His technique would have been seen by everyone lying in wait. The element of surprise would no longer be on his side, and with all the other players coming for him, he would quickly get eliminated from contention easily. I have to wait until someone else comes and tries to take a drop. This was what the others planned as well. It was just then that in the midst of hushed silences and muffled heartbeats, heavy footsteps suddenly echoed around the forest. It was loud. Whoever was walking had no intention of ever hiding his presence at all. And once everyone looked at who it was, they understood his confidence. It was a man with a tall, lanky build, with a bald head like that of a monk, wearing minimal armor, and wielding a giant turquoise battle axe on his back. It was Potbull. The man walked leisurely towards the platform, coming closer to the drops than anyone ever had. Everyone was on their guard. With Potbull being one of the strongest fighters in Metropolis, they didn't want to be the first one to fight him. But it seemed that everyone was afraid as well, which only gave Potbull more time to approach the drops. Eventually, Potbull reached the edge of the red platform. Just one step and he would be within reach of the drops of Sue. He took the step, and suddenly, a few figures burst out of their hiding spots and charged at Potbull. One of Potbull's teammates immediately intercepted some of Potbull's enemies, stopping them in their tracks. In a flash, Potbull was face to face with 3 8th-stage magnetics who were baring their arms at him. But not all players charged at Potbull. They were smart. They instead used the timing of the chaos to go for the drops instead. Michael was one of them. Chapter 625, High-Speed Moments. Michael dashed out of the leaves. His target was the pillar closest to him. It was the easiest way to get a drop of Sue, and it was also in the opposite space where Potbull was fighting. And as he looked to his left and right, he saw Aerith and Bobby also going for the same pillar of Sue he was going for. I could use my quantum step now. Aerith, Bobby, and a few other players noticed his presence. But luckily for him, their attention was on each other. Aerith and Bobby were considered one of the strongest magnetics as well, given that they were in the 9th stage of body formation. Comparatively, Michael was only in the 4th stage. His speed and danger levels were nothing compared to them. In their eyes, they could easily defeat him once he got too close. So, the players decided to swarm Aerith and Bobby, knowing that if they got too near the pillars, then it was basically guaranteed that they would obtain one for themselves. This gave Michael the chance to break free from the crowd. He dashed ahead, with Aerith and Bobby getting bogged down by the other players. The red platform was just a few steps away from him, but it was at that moment that he felt a tingling on the back of his neck. He turned around and saw someone charge at him with a sword. The glow in his weapon, as well as the heat signature coming from his Godforge pieces, all indicated that he was in the 8th stage of body formation. In short, this was someone that could single-handedly defeat him in a single attack, even if it wasn't an ability. The man swung at him, using nothing but his physicality and his pure strength. This would have been enough to defeat normal 4th stage magnetic. But this only gave Michael a chance to slip away. Michael's wrist started to bend the very fabric of space around it, creating a seemingly black hole effect around his hands. One of the 7 batteries attached to his chest spooled out a thick thread of ability power towards his hands, empowering it with enough energy to complete the warp. The man's sword swung through the air, just less than an inch before it would slash through Michael's shoulder, when all of a sudden, Michael disappeared from his sight. Flustered and surprised, the man lost his balance and ended up kneeling on the ground, with his sword pierced into the soil. Wah! Just then, a bright ray of light emerged from the skies above and shone down on the platform, specifically towards one of the pillars containing a Su drop. Everyone quickly turned their eyes, with their expressions turning into shock and confusion as they saw Michael grabbing a hold of one of the vials. Somehow, throughout all the chaos, the very weakest player in the game was the first one to get a Su drop. No one could believe this. Could he have been so weak that no one was paying attention to him while he just casually waltzed into the platform? This was so shocking that practically everyone stopped fighting and just stared at Michael for a second. They didn't know how he did it. But for the crowd watching up above, everything was crystal clear. Michael didn't sneak past everyone. He ran ahead of everyone else, even with an 8th stage magnetic chasing after him. How did he do that? He disappeared. That's so fast. That's impossible. A 4th stage magnetic shouldn't be able to do that. The speed that Michael showcased was way beyond what was possible for someone at his level. He sped past an 8th stage magnetic. Now, everyone was starting to figure out that his previous lucky incidents weren't that lucky after all. They were deliberate. Those were displays of skill. But while everyone was still reeling from this unexpected outcome, Michael kept his laser focus. Now that everyone saw his quantum step, he only had a limited time until they snapped out of their confusion. Once the vial disappeared from his hands, this signaled his ownership of the drop of Su. He then quickly put his eyes on the next goal. He turned sideways, looking at the pillar just a few meters away from him. With the batteries on his chest filled with ability power, he had all the energy he needed to continuously use his quantum step to sweep all of the drops in the platform. But just as his hands manifested the warping of the fabric of space, he suddenly saw something move from the corner of his eyes. Based on pure instinct, he immediately changed the trajectory of his quantum step. Just as he arrived at his new spot, he turned around and saw Potbull swinging his battle axe to where he was going to teleport to. Potbull's face showed surprise and confusion. He looked at Michael, intrigued at the strange and powerful technique that he used to surpass even his own speed. Damn, looks like I caught the big fish. This guy was the only obstacle he had from getting all of the drops on the platform. He was sure that as soon as he turned his back on him, he would find an axe staked right through his back. I have to defeat him. No matter the impossibility, the adrenaline of the situation made Michael get rid of any unnecessary thoughts. His goal was the drops and Potbull was his obstacle. He reached down his pockets and retrieved the Unity Saber switch. With a click, his weapon came to life. Potbull looked intrigued, wondering how someone 5 stages lower than him would have the confidence to fight him in a one-on-one battle using weapons. Potbull subtly nodded, accepting Michael's challenge. With the crowd watching above with bated breaths and nail-biting anxiousness at the clearly mismatched duel, Michael raised his Unity Saber and readied his attack. In Potbull's eyes, his movements were slow like molasses, with plenty of holes and weaknesses in his stance. But Potbull knew that Michael had a reality warping speed up his sleeves. Holding his Unity Saber with both hands, Michael drew from his batteries and gathered power in his wrists. Potbull saw the fabric of space warping around Michael's wrists, and in the next instant Michael disappeared. His eyes went wide, with panic and with shock, as he completely lost where Michael had disappeared to. Behind him, Michael reappeared, with his hands swinging down with his Unity saber. But that wasn't all. 3 fully charged batteries from his chest suddenly burst with power as they unleashed the energy they had in store. These 3 ability power threads coalesced together, weaving into a thicker one before supplying Michael's hands with a huge surge of power. He was using his Quantum Slash. This was the perfect time, with Potbull still a few milliseconds away from noticing his presence. The reality around the Unity Saber started to warp, with an intensity much more extreme than the quantum steps. The fabric of space ripped apart, creating a hole in reality and causing a bright orange light made out of high-temperature plasma to appear in front of the saber. Chapter 626. Perfect Timing. Michael's attack was in perfect timing. He swung his Unity Saber towards Potbull, launching the reality-shredding crescent strike towards him. But at that same moment, Potbull closed his eyes and summoned the Diva above his head. The projection of a millennium tree, one with massive roots and thick trunks, gave Potbull the serenity that he needed. Suddenly, Potbull's skin started to glow golden, much like a Buddha. With his ability activated, his entire body was now completely invulnerable to any attacks. Even though Potbull was unable to see Michael in time, he was able to guess, purely from pure instinct and battle IQ, that he was going to get attacked from behind. So as a precaution, he immediately activated his ability to nullify any attack that Michael could conjure. Just then, the reality-shredding crescent strike finally hit him back, with the Millennium Tree above him projecting its ethereal glow to resist the attack. Potbull, confident of his own defense, quickly raised his battle axe and ready to counterattack. But it was in that moment that he felt a sharp pain from behind him. Blood poured down his back. He looked behind him and saw the crescent strike shredding the very reality around Millennium Tree's protection. It slashed through his impermeable defense and cleaved a deep injury spanning from his right shoulder down to his left waist. Potbull looked down. A horrified look descended upon his face as he saw his own blood dripping down into the ground. Somehow he got injured. Even when he was using his 9th stage ability that allowed him to literally be impervious to any attack, he still incurred a large gash on his back. The pain he was feeling was nothing compared to the damage to his pride and his own self-esteem. He couldn't understand how his own ability had failed to stand up against an attack from a 4th stage magnetic. No one could. Aerith, Bobby, and all the other players competing in the game stared at Michael. Even they weren't confident that they would have been able to injure Potbull normally, especially if he had his ability activated. But somehow Michael did. Even the crowd watching from above went entirely speechless. They stood up and wiped their eyes, wondering if what they saw was correct. No way. How can Potbull get injured? He activated his ability. What are Michael's powers? First, he has speeds that can surpass 9th stage magnetics, and second, he has a power that can even injure someone invincible. Meanwhile, the Mermen, who weren't usually impressed by things of human nature, couldn't help but applaud Michael's talents. This kid might be the first decent talent I've seen in the overworld, one the Merman commented. So young too. If he weren't a human, then I would have wanted to recruit him to our family. What do you think, mistress? They all turned towards the woman in the highest seat, with hair as curly as seaweeds and as orange as the setting sun. How interesting, she muttered. Her voice indicated her youth, probably only a few years older than Michael. He's able to use that while being so low in cultivation? I didn't even know that was possible, she muttered. One of the mermen couldn't help but speak up. What do you mean, mistress? Unlike her, most of the mermen here were completely clueless about human cultivation. The woman opened her mouth, about to explain, when her attention was suddenly pulled towards the pocket dimension. She noticed something on the corner of her eyes. A very fast blur was rushing towards the center, aiming for the platform containing the drops of Sue. Looks like we'll see it soon, she said, with an intrigued smile on her face. While Potbull was still shocked at seeing his own blood drip down to the ground, Michael took this chance and ran towards the next drop of Sue. He stretched out his hands and grasped at the vial on top of the pillar. Immediately, Another beam of light shone down from the skies and officially signaled his ownership of the drop of Su. 2 drops down. This is my chance. With Potbull out for the moment, there was no one else left to stop him from using the rest of his 300% battery energy to quantum step towards 10 other drops of Su. His hands started to bend reality, warping the fabric of space, when all of a sudden, he felt the air turn heavy around him. Kukukuku. Finally, a worthy opponent. He could feel Harbinger stir at the moment that he felt the change in atmosphere, as if his blood boiled with excitement. Just then, a sudden explosion caused him to turn his head. He saw 2 players get launched away due to the shockwave, with their bodies teleporting in midair, meaning that with just that explosion alone, they were knocked out and eliminated from the game. A fast object blurred from the point of explosion and dashed towards the next group of players, eliminating them from the game with just 1 eruption as well. One by one, players kept dropping like flies. Aerith and Bobby both stopped in their tracks and looked at this blur, with their eyes showing shock and surprise. "Damn it! He's done it," Aerith said, clicking her tongue. "He's left us in the dust again," Bobby muttered. It was at that point when the blur dashed towards them. Aerith raised her giant needle, using it as a sword to block the attack. Bobby held his hammer upside down, using it for pure defense. As the blur crashed towards them, an explosion burst outwards and created a shockwave that disturbed the soil and silt on the ground. It was only when the dust settled a few seconds later did everyone finally catch a glimpse of this blurry creature. Aerith and Bobby were still standing, with their arms and bodies shaking as they felt an immense amount of force pushing them down. Even their 9th stage cultivation didn't seem enough to stand their ground. In front of them was someone everyone was familiar with. It was the famous Allaric Goldstone, said to be the strongest magnetic in all of Metropolis. But his strength shouldn't be more powerful than 2 9th stage magnetics holding him down. Yet, he was still able to push Aerith and Bobby down to their knees. There's something different about him. What is he wearing? I know that. That's. Alaric's entire body was clad in black armor, which was seemingly made out of obsidian. His head was covered in a helmet, with large bulbous visors around his eyes that had millions of little specks around its surface. Above his forehead were 2 black antennae, subtly moving as it scanned around the area. And perhaps the most distinct and most eye-catching feature on his new attire were the pair of black and white wings on his back. His wings were larger than his own arms, making the eye-like design on it become that much more intimidating to anyone who gazed at him. Meanwhile, atop the auction, the so-called mistress smiled as she gazed at Alaric's new form. "Now that, my dear brothers, is the next realm of the Diva cultivation that humans have. It is called the Nascent Spirit Realm." Chapter 627, Nascent Spirit. Michael looked at Alaric's new form and felt the hairs on his arm stand up. The power that he was emanating was incredibly powerful, enough to make him know that this wasn't just the power that a 9th stage body formation magnetic could make. This was beyond that. "Harbinger, what is this? Kukuko. It seems like that kid has been hiding his true strength after all. He has already transcended into the next realm." Allaric had broken through, and with this next realm, Michael could feel the ability power emanating from him even without looking through his drones. It was so powerful that it was starting to become visible to the naked eye. He could see why. His diva wasn't merely projected above him. Instead, it was inside him. It had merged with him. That was why his attire was completely different from his normal clothes. In fact, it wasn't an attire at all. That was his body. The obsidian-like armor around his body was his own skin. Alaric's black butterfly diva had united with his body, allowing him access to the enormous energy of his diva. So this is the next realm, Michael thought, his eyes filled with both awe and fear. Just then, a violet aura emanated from Alaric's body as he pushed Aerith and Bobby into the ground. The power was too much for them to bear, causing them to collapse into the ground, writhing in pain. And using his drone vision, Michael was able to see through Alaric's body and the way that his ability power spread throughout his body. Unlike normal activation of an ability where the AP threads extend outwards into the real world to alter the reality, Allaric used his enormous and blinding ability power to instead empower his new butterfly-human hybrid body. "That looks familiar," he remarked. But no matter how much he wanted to find the connection in his memory, he knew that he didn't have time to contemplate. With two of his greatest competitors taken out, Allaric set his compound butterfly eyes towards the red platform. He flapped his black and white butterfly wings, allowing him to float in midair and slowly make his way towards the drops of Sue. Just then, Potbull jumped towards Allaric and faced him with his battle axe. "So you've transcended to the nascent spirit realm. How long have you been hiding this power?" Potbull asked. "I achieved my breakthrough a few days ago," Allaric replied, with his voice sounding echoey and a timbre lower than his usual tone. Potbull bit his lips, frustrated that he had been misled. He was treating Allaric as his rival, as his equal adversary. But the truth was that he never had a chance. Allaric had transcended into the next realm. The power difference between the 9th stage of body formation and the 1st stage of nascent spirit was as high as the earth and the heavens above. Potbull raised his battle axe, swinging it with full force at Allaric, with his ability power running at full force. But Allaric simply raised his hand, catching the battle axe with his bare fingers. Potbull tried to retrieve his weapon, but it wouldn't budge. Just then, Allaric balled up his other fist and pulled back his arm, getting ready to punch him. The ethereal glow of the Millennium Tree appeared around Potbull's body, allowing him to have an invincible body. Allaric's hands blurred, punching Potbull right in his stomach. The violet aura around Allaric's hands clashed against Potbull's ethereal golden glow, popping it like a balloon. Potbull felt the power of Allaric's punch in his gut, sending him flying through the air and towards the outskirts of the pocket dimension itself. Allaric landed back on the ground, ready to obtain his prize. But just then, another beam of light shone down into the ground, showing that another drop of Sue had been claimed. Michael claimed his 3rd drop. While Allaric was dealing with Potbull, he sneakily rushed to get the next vial in line. "I don't think I can sneak another drop." Allaric was staring at him, with his big, compound eyes showing no emotion whatsoever. His whole face was indifferent. It was as if he knew that from this point onward, there was nothing that Michael could do to get the other drops. With all of the 9th stage magnetics done and dealt with, it seemed inevitable that Allaric would obtain the rest of the Sue drops in the platform. "I only have one shot, one quantum slash left on my battery." Judging from the speed Allaric had shown, it seemed that even his quantum step wouldn't be enough to outpace him. If he wanted a fighting chance, then he needed to go big. He raised his Unity Saber, gathering all the energy left in his batteries to power his hands. As the reality warped around his Unity Saber, Allaric floated up and flew towards him at incredibly fast speeds, turning his entire body into a blur. Michael gripped the switch tight as he unleashed the shredding of the fabric of space in a crescent shape that launched it forward, just as Allaric arrived in front of him. Allaric was mere inches away from the crescent, with glowing plasma illuminating his face with an orange glow. But just as it was about to hit him, Allaric raised his hand and grabbed at the crescent with his bare hands. Allaric's face changed from indifference into one of mild surprise. He was feeling a slight discomfort from Michael's attack. Yet it was nothing more than a scratch. Reality tried to rip apart in his hands, but Allaric's violet aura suppressed the power forcefully, mending it back in place. Gripping the crescent, Allaric pushed it back towards Michael, letting the ripping reality shred the Unity Saber in his hands. Michael clutched his weapon tightly, trying to fight against Allaric's power. But it was futile. His strength was akin to an ant trying to push a car. Eventually, he felt the switch in his hands start to tremble intensely before it exploded into pure dust, releasing the Unity beam flying off into the skies. Just being in close proximity to Allaric's ability power caused his own ability to falter under the pressure. Gritting his teeth, still indignant, still persistent, Michael opened up the batteries in his chest and tried to absorb the power coming from Allaric's body. Within an instant, all 7 batteries went from a 0% battery charge and shot up to 100%, and then 1000%. His batteries glowed red-hot and trembled under the power it was trying to contain. But as Allaric's body exuded more ability power, His batteries kept on absorbing them, causing the very material in his batteries to disintegrate. His ability couldn't hold on any longer and exploded outwards, causing Michael to fly backwards into a tree, almost making him go unconscious. He coughed, with blood coming out of his mouth. But he didn't care. He looked up and saw Allaric coming closer to the pillars. Forcing his body to move, he crawled towards the platform. Allaric touched a vial, obtaining a drop of Su. Walking over to the next one, he obtained another. And then another. At this point, it seemed like he would obtain all remaining Su drops for himself. It looked like the auction would finally be over. Chapter 628. Innovation. With Allaric's nascent spirit cultivation, there was no one else who could match his strength and his speed. The drops of Su were getting claimed left and right, with no one else to stop him. The crowd, and even Barnaby, was starting to prepare his announcement for the inevitable end of the auction. Even the orange-haired female Merman clicked her tongue in disappointment. "Ah, I was really rooting for the little guy," she said. "But it looks like the auction is finally over. Let's go." With her cue, the Merman started their preparation to leave the VIP rooms. With blood dripping out of his mouth, and his legs twitching and barely able to move, even Michael was starting to accept that he was going to lose the other drops. He obtained 3 drops anyway, which was already a bonus that he wasn't even supposed to obtain. He was supposed to be the last one to get a chance at the drops, but he still got 3 drops despite the obstacles in his way. He should be satisfied with that. He should be content. But there was something in his heart that just wouldn't quit. Kept thumping, urging him to move his body and get those drops that he very much deserved. Cuckoo, that's right, Michael. Move. As he delved down into the void of his own mind, it was as if time itself stopped as he looked up at the giant figure of Harbinger, with most of his body still shrouded in a dark cloud. Is this your limit? Are you willing to accept defeat in the face of someone stronger? With such a large gap between their strengths, no one would even be questioning his decision to give up. Allaric's nascent spirit cultivation was something that he couldn't overcome, even with all the advantages he had over others. His quantum step seemed like a leisurely walk in front of Allaric, his quantum slash nothing but a scratch. The difference between them was thoroughly obvious. Yet Michael didn't want to accept his defeat. He wanted to fight. He wanted to obtain those drops. "Give me strength, Harbinger," he said, pleading. But this time Harbinger was silent. It looked at him with a solemn face, as if it was nothing more than a mere statue. Michael sighed, knowing that divas weren't almighty that could create a miracle with a single snap of a finger. He opened his eyes and saw Allaric obtaining another vial, making his total into 4 drops. His heart dropped, feeling jealous of something that wasn't even his in the first place. And it was in that moment that a thought flashed through his mind. He remembered the moment when he was face to face with Allaric, when he grabbed the quantum slash with his own hands. Being so close to Allaric made him feel the ability power emanating off of his body. Back in the heat of the moment, he felt a strange familiarity with it, as if he had seen it all before. But it was only in this moment where the links finally aligned and he grasped the truth. He looked down at his own wrists, realizing that he had been doing the same thing. Allaric was using his ability power to empower his physical strength beyond that of a normal human. His quantum step and his quantum slash worked exactly in the same way, altering the reality of his own body instead of altering the reality outside his own. The techniques Harbinger taught him were something that only nascent spirit cultivators could do. Cuckoo. You finally realized it. Took you long enough. His mind was blown. No wonder they cost a lot of ability power. Those were techniques meant for when he advanced to the next realm of diva cultivation. You were teaching me something above my own realm? You can do that? I told you. This is our advantage against all those other soulless divas. They have to pave the way while I show you the way. But it's not only because of me that you were able to perform those techniques. I didn't teach you how to gather enough energy to execute them. You learned it all on your own. Even with Harbinger's teachings, everything would have been useless had he not figured out how to create the battery. You say you want strength, then get it yourself. Think, Michael. These innovations, these breakthroughs, When does it happen? Harbinger's words made him remember back to the moments when he first awakened his abilities. For the Switch, it was only when he was pushed to the brink with his fight against Blazel did he finally awaken his first power. Then, during the auction, he learned how to use his Switch to create the Unity Saber and the Unity Cage. Fighting against Bo, losing to her, forced him to awaken his second ability, the Reverse Graphite Block. And in these last 2 games, he fought against Magnetics 3 to 4 stages above him, forcing him to improvise and learn new techniques. He had to, if he wanted to survive. All the things these moments had in common was the fact that he was pushed to the brink of defeat, with seemingly no way out. It was the times when he needed to get stronger or else risk failure or even his life. Necessity is the mother of innovation, he realized. Harbinger's mouth glowed with a bright smile under the dark fog, illuminating his face for a brief moment. Exactly. Ask yourself this question. Why did humans evolve to become the greatest species in the world? It's because they advanced. They adapted. When humans needed food to survive in the wild, they found a way to make their own with agriculture. When nature itself became inhospitable, they carved cities out of mountains. They built land that reached the skies. They built civilizations. And when their land became too crowded, they braved through the toughest seas and conquered new frontiers. And when that wasn't enough, they took to the stars and transcended their own mortal fates. That is what the future is all about, Michael. When our powers are not enough, we have to adapt. We have to change. We have to be better. We are the harbingers of the future. Michael opened his eyes, with a gaze filled with clarity and understanding. Finally, it made sense as to why Harbinger kept pushing him to fight Magnetics much stronger than him. It's because Harbinger knew that it would only push him to become better. And he did. The same could be said now. He looked up and saw Allaric moving towards his next target. He had just obtained his 5th vial, and was about to go for his 6th. He saw no way of ever defeating Allaric with his cultivation. Speed, power, ability, none of those he could overcome. He was thoroughly outclassed in every way right now. But what about in the future? He reached down into his pockets, retrieving the reverse graphite block from his inventory. He looked at its cassette-like structure, with one spool of tape on the left side and one on the right. Atop the left spool was the button for his reverse ability. And atop the right one was completely empty. Until right now, a new button emerged, made entirely out of graphite. With one swift move, he clicked it. Clink. Chapter 629. Adaptation. As soon as he clicked on the button, he felt his heartbeat increase to what seemed like 1,000 beats per second. His Godforge pieces worked overtime, glowing hotter and hotter than it had ever been before. He clutched his chest, feeling the discomfort of having his heart overwork like an engine. His entire body felt hot, as if lava was pumping through his veins. Steam started to rise up from his skin as the water molecules around his body started to immediately boil into a gaseous state. His adolescent body couldn't take the power generated by the Godforge pieces. It was starting to destroy it. So he had to adapt. With blood circulating through his body 1,000 times per second, his cells started to accelerate their multiplication. His bones, under intense pressure and energy from the ability power given off by his Godforge pieces, started to have microscopic fractures. However, the accelerated cell reproduction in his body healed them immediately, making them stronger, bigger, better. This happened throughout all of his organs and his physical structure, breaking them down and growing them into an advanced version of his body. In a few moments, his height started to grow, inch by inch as his body experienced an accelerated growth. His jaws turned sharper. His golden hair grew past his ears, and his juvenile muscles started to mature and take shape into one of an adult's. His body aged 5 years in an instant, turning him into an 18-year-old. With his mature body, he could finally manage the toll of power that his Godforge pieces created. Everyone watching this from above couldn't help but gasp as they witnessed an impossible transformation right in front of their very eyes. As the steam around Michael's body dissipated, they finally laid their eyes on Michael. The childish and cute Michael that they were so familiar with had turned into an Adonis, with his undersized clothes fitting around his muscles tightly. Rena and Bo's cheeks flushed with flusteredness as they saw Michael in the same age group as them. He's handsome. Just then, a golden aura manifested throughout Michael's body, engulfing him with pure ability power coming straight from his heart. It was at this moment that Harbinger's hands manifested above him, and as his Godforge pieces pumped more and more AP, his body no longer rejected it. It absorbed it like a sponge, retaining all of the power it generated, causing his Diva's projection to become more and more real, as if it was starting to merge into reality. He raised his hands, moving it towards the futuristic mechanical limbs of Harbinger. The robot arms descended down towards his body, phasing through him until it locked into place with his own arms. Large, stainless steel metal shoulder pads latched onto his skin, finishing its transformation as a real object as it made contact with his body. Synthetic fibers weaved itself through his upper arm, forming his biceps and triceps. Glowing white lights pulsated throughout his skin, giving a glimpse of the complicated circuitry now in his veins. After that, an unknown metal as stretchy as rubber but as hard as iron formed around the joint of his elbows, with mechanisms hiding underneath it. Then, sleek metal guards latched onto his forearm, with unknown symbols flashing on its surface like a screen. And finally, he grabbed at the robotic hands, forming around him like a glove. Every inch of his arm was covered in some kind of metal, with flashing lights and complicated mechatronics whirring from underneath all the armor. Finally, he fused with his Diva. He achieved something impossible, something that shouldn't have happened until much later in his cultivation. He fast-forwarded to the point in his life when he achieved the nascent spirit cultivation. And as his fusion with his Diva finished, the golden aura around him exploded out and created a shockwave almost as powerful as a bomb. The ground underneath his feet tapered off, reduced to mere dust in the wind. The trees around him broke off from their roots, splintering into hundreds of pieces. The air created a furious wind, one that even made Allaric stop in his tracks and look back at Michael. Allaric's compound butterfly eyes focused on him, seeing through his body like an X-ray and seeing the abnormality in his Godforge pieces. It was emanating the same intensity of strength he had. Michael's matured body confused Allaric at first, thinking that he was a different person. But the golden hair on his head basically confirmed his identity. But that wasn't the surprising thing about him. Allaric's eyes panned over to the part of Michael's body where his ability power was most concentrated. He noticed the mechanical arms around Michael, with his face morphing into one of shock and confusion as he realized what he was seeing. He had merged with his Diva. It was incomplete, with only his arms fully merged together, but that was undoubtedly the same Diva that Michael manifested earlier before. Impossible, Allaric muttered. Even the crowd watching from the auction couldn't believe their eyes. Michael, the boy who had a fourth-stage body formation cultivation, had turned into a full-fledged man who merged with his Diva. Everyone was speechless. Even the female Merman had to get up from her seat to realize that what she was seeing was the real thing. "This can't be," Allaric muttered in disbelief. Just then, Michael opened his eyes, showing a glowing light. He smiled, with a hint of arrogance and assuredness. "Nothing's impossible with me. Nothing's impossible with me." Michael and Harbinger's voice mixed together, creating a double tone that almost created an echoing effect. As soon as Allaric heard that, the two antennae atop his head wiggled with unease. He felt danger coming ahead. Suddenly, Michael's robotic hands pulsated with activity. The metal surrounding his elbows morphed as nanoparticles rearranged themselves to form the nozzle of a rocket ship. His elbows glowed with an orange light as a jet stream pulsated out from the nozzle, creating an intense force around his arms that started to bend the very fabric of space. This was the quantum step, and in an instant, Michael disappeared from Allaric's compound eyes, surprising him. He flusteredly looked around before finding Michael on the red platform, touching a vial of Sue in his hands and claiming it as his own. That's four. Allaric's wings flapped, creating a small gust of wind around him that grew and grew until it eventually formed a large tornado imbued with pure ability power. Clouds brewed overhead, with thunder crackling and lightning striking the tornado and empowering it with electricity. With a single flap of the wing, Allaric was able to create a disastrous calamity. This was his technique, the butterfly effect. Allaric jumped towards the tornado, empowering his entire body with the chaos and power of natural phenomena. With tremendous power in his hands, Allaric charged towards Michael at near instantaneous speeds. After admiring the vial of Sue in his hands, Michael leisurely looked back at Allaric with a cocky smile on his face. He casually raised his right hand. "Stop! Stop!" Suddenly, Allaric stopped in place, with his posture still mid-punch and with his fist just a few inches away from Michael's face. Chapter 630, Victory. Allaric found himself unable to move. His body refused to. He could feel the diva inside him shivering in fear, as if the very sound of Michael's voice was making it recoil in fright. Michael turned back his attention towards the vials of Sue. One by one, he touched every pillar in the red platform. He got his 5th, his 6th, his 7th, and continued on. Allaric could only watch helplessly as Michael obtained every single drop of Sue still available on the platform. As Michael touched the last vial, the last beam of light shone down from the heavens above and illuminated the drop of Sue in his hands. He did it. In the end, he got all 10 drops. With his job done, the Godforge pieces in Michael's heart started slowing down. The mechanical armor around his arms started to lose their physicality, turning into a projection that slowly dissipated in the air. His body rapidly cooled down, with his skin starting to frost everywhere around his body. His muscles shrank, his bones lost volume, and his newly regenerated abundance of cells regressed one by one. In just a few moments, his body turned back into adolescence, one fitting for a 13-year-old boy. Pushing himself into the future put a large toll on his body, his mind, and his soul. He fell to his knees and collapsed on the ground. The auction had finally ended. Even after the game had concluded, nobody was moving. They had their eyes focused and still rapt at Michael. What they saw was beyond comprehension. It was something out of reality, and even out of imagination. If someone told them yesterday that they would see a 4th-stage magnetic boy merge with his diva and win the game, they would have just ignored them and wouldn't even entertain the idea. Aerith, Bobby, and Potbull, who had been eliminated from the game earlier, looked at Michael with shock. Even though they were in the 9th stage of body formation, they knew they were still far away from merging with their divas. Yet he did it. It was incomplete, but he still did it. Even the so-called experts in diva cultivation and abilities had no answer for what they had just seen. That was supposed to have been impossible. From Michael's flying mithril artifact weapons to his reality-defying powers, everything around Michael seemed impossible. Barnaby himself was still utterly shocked at what Michael had done. Just like the others, he was just blankly staring at the pocket dimension, not knowing what to do even though the game had technically ended. "Ladies and gentlemen, the game is over," he muttered out, still in disbelief. It was only when Michael and Allaric were both teleported out of the pocket dimension did reality truly sink in for Barnaby. Michael won. He won against Allaric and all the other major factions in Metropolis. He obtained 10 drops from 15, all the while only having himself for his team. And one might also add that he was only in the 4th stage of body formation. He immediately had his best doctors and magical physicians oversee Michael's recovery. The boy was still breathing steadily, which meant that he was probably just completely exhausted from the fight. Barnaby considered this a miracle, given how much he must have strained himself to achieve what he had achieved. The results of tonight's game for the Spirit of Old Drops have been decided. Give it up for Allaric and the Gilder & Company, who obtained 5 drops of Sue in total. This is an outcome that we expected going into the auction. But the overall winner of tonight's bidding is someone that I bet had never crossed your ears before this auction. He is someone who has shown great talent in magic, in cultivation, and even in innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you all to clap your hands for the owner of the Reborn Company, to the innovator of the automobiles, and the current sensation of the entirety of Metropolis, Michael Vanderbilt. Barnaby's announcement finally broke everyone's stupor. making them focus back into the auction. There were a few points in his speech that caught their ears. Did I hear that right? He's the one who created the automobiles. This, in particular, stirred up a lot of conversation and discussions amongst the crowd. The automobiles, which now everyone considered to be the future of transportation, was created by none other than Michael and the Reborn company. So that's where he gets all his money from. Michael's apparent wealth that could even rival that of the major factions was something that was highly debated around. But now the truth finally came out. Soon after that, the pieces fell into place. He owned the automobiles, which was probably why the Duchess seemed to favor him so much that she was even willing to give her black medallion to him. He owned the automobiles, so Barnaby was implored to give him one of the VIP suites in the auction. If they start to sell automobiles in Metropolis, I really think that the Reborn company is going to become part of the major factions in the future. Michael had shown strength and power deserving of a high spot in the rankings. He defeated Bo and the Rising Six, meaning that he should replace her in the top spot. Many were still doubting that he deserved that spot, given that power wasn't the only factor in a ranking. But this revelation completely upended that. He deserved that ranking and more, especially with what he showcased in this game. And once Michael's last name was revealed to everyone, their fate in the major factions seemed all the more fitting. He's a Vanderbilt. Due to unfortunate circumstances, the Vanderbilt name was tarnished in Metropolis. It was no longer the prestigious title it once was, with many thinking that the talents of the great Lion Eyes Vanderbilt weren't passed down to his descendants. But Michael's very presence disproved that. With his abundant talent at such a young age, it seemed that he was destined to bring the Vanderbilt name back to the top. Meanwhile, in the Merman's VIP suite, the red-haired young mermaid peered through the tinted glass and watched as Michael got escorted away into the backstage. There was excitement and adoration in her eyes. "I have to meet him," she exclaimed. The mermen around her immediately disagreed with her decision. "Young mistress, we simply do not have time for trifling matters." The young mermaid immediately protested. "You don't understand. This guy is special. He's different." Her frustration only grew more as she saw how clueless her merman attendants were to what they just witnessed. They were completely ignorant to human cultivation, which meant they didn't know the significance to what Michael had just pulled off. "Need I remind you that your father has tasked you with this mission, young mistress? We have to find the Pixie Queen. We cannot waste any more time." The young mermaid bit her lips, unable to hold on to her frustrations. She could only curse her luck that finding Michael coincided at a very critical juncture in her mission in the surface world. Chapter 631. Afterparty. Immediately after the conclusion of the final game, Barnaby announced that the dinner and afterparty of the auction would commence shortly. This happens every year after a successful auction, allowing the companies and the crowd to mingle with each other socially, celebrate wins, or even discuss business opportunities. After all, one purpose of the games was to show competence to potential customers and investors. That was why many up-and-coming companies were eager to show their worth. Almost everyone was present, from the Duchess Regina and her royal family, as well as the other important figures like the Tower Master as well as Kruger, the Heavenly Knight who trained Potbull to be the beast he was now. But despite the important figures present in the party, there was just one person missing from attendance: Michael Vanderbilt. His presence was sorely missed, with a lot of companies and people disappointed that they couldn't introduce themselves to the rising star of Metropolis. The demand for the name Michael Vanderbilt was at an all-time high, especially after the revelation that he was the one who invented the automobiles. It wouldn't be hard to guess why a lot of these people wanted to make a connection with Michael. However, Michael and the entirety of the Reborn company were completely gone from the auction. After collapsing from exhaustion, Michael was whisked away into the best health facility that was managed by Aerith herself. Their branch of Sinclair's elixir was the best option available by a long shot. Of course, all of his teammates and his family rushed to his side in worry, which explained their absence for tonight's gathering. But the event wasn't entirely quiet either. There was one presence in the afterparty that gathered everyone's attention. Her curly orange hair, white and pale skin, as well as her striking blue eyes made for a striking combination of beauty that would have captured anyone's attention. But they weren't just focused on her face. The deep blue and violet scales surrounding her face immediately painted her as someone non-human. She was a mermaid and seemingly one with a noble background as well. Compared to the other mermen surrounding her, this mermaid wore exotic and extravagant stringed pearls as her necklace and opalescent dark beads as her earrings. Those that were familiar with merman culture and about the deep sea in general knew that those pearls weren't just taken from ordinary clams and oysters. Those were byproducts of ancient monster mollusks living in the deepest depths of the ocean, tens of thousands underneath sea level. No human and no ordinary merman could survive an encounter with those beasts, so those special pearls became a symbol of power and influence in Atlantis. So they're the mermen I've been hearing about. I've never seen them before. They look like ordinary humans apart from some cosmetic differences. They're even breathing through their noses. I thought they'd only have gills. That's because they're in the surface world. Once they're underwater, their physical bodies change slightly to accommodate life in the harsh seas. They grow gills on their necks and grow webbing on their hands for easier movement through the water. As much as a lot of people wanted to approach the orange-haired mermaid, the mermen surrounding her intimidated everyone into keeping their distance. There was only one person who could approach, and that was Duchess Regina, who had met them before. She was the one who invited them to Metropolis in the first place. "Princess Serena, I hope you enjoyed the auction for tonight," the Duchess said, greeting with a slight bow. Serena smiled back at her and returned a bow. "I must admit, Duchess, I didn't think my trip to the surface world would be so exciting." Immediately, the Duchess knew what she was talking about, or rather, who. "Yes, I think we've all been surprised tonight. Even I never expected that boy to be that powerful. He truly is one of a kind." The Duchess's praise came straight from the heart, which she saw that Serena responded positively to. "I know, right?" Serena replied, her excitement rushing. Noticing this, the Duchess offered to mediate a meeting between the two of them. "I could introduce you if you'd like." "Really?" She was about to continue her conversation with the Duchess about Michael when her attendants behind her coughed, signaling for her to get back on topic. Serena pursed her lips and sighed. "It's all right. There are other matters that I have to attend to." "Is something the matter, Princess?" the Duchess asked, noticing the impatient look on her face. "If it's in my capacity and the entirety of Metropolis, then perhaps I can help you. As you know, Duchess, our mission in the surface world is to make sure that the cooperation between us sea dwellers and the Draconians will go smoothly. My father wants to ensure that the connection between the continents will continue from this point onwards, and this trial run will make or break those plans." The Duchess nodded in understanding. As the sitting royal of a capital city, she knew about the politics surrounding the agreement between the Ocean King and the Draconic Queen. Both would stand to gain a lot from this endeavor, so they had to make sure that nothing would go wrong. "One of the things that I have to do is to find a way to integrate our culture into yours. Mermen find it hard to go into the surface world because our needs are completely different than humans, and vice versa. This makes for a very mismatched coalescence of the two different cultures. To remedy that, I have a simple solution. I would like to formally announce to the citizens of Metropolis that I, Princess Serena, am offering a limited-time deal to humans. If you can obtain 10,000 sand dollars, then you can purchase 1 drop of the spirit of old." Serena modulated her voice at the last part, letting the entirety of the party hear her words. This revelation sent shock and awe to all companies present. "Is she serious? They're letting us buy Sue drops? No way. And it's at an extremely discounted price too. It only costs 10,000 sand dollars to get 1 single drop of Sue. That means even us ordinary folk can get the chance to get lots of Sue drops." The Duchess was also surprised to hear this. All this time, the Ocean King regulated the selling of Sue drops very strictly. Sometimes you couldn't even buy them even if you had a lot of money. But now, he was giving humans a direct line to the very source of Sue drops. This was unprecedented. "Wait, sand dollars? That's the merman's currency, right? How are we going to get that?" Many people's excitement was tempered once they realized that Sue drops would still be as hard to obtain as before. After all, Merman had no reason to spend their sand dollars in the surface world. Even if you gave them 100 billion gold coins in exchange for a single sand dollar, they wouldn't take it. They had no need for human currency. The Duchess finally realized what Serena was planning. You're trying to get humans to integrate Merman into our society. With Sue drops available for purchase, humans would be much more willing to accommodate the needs of the Merman so that they could obtain sand dollars in return. Chapter 632. The next day. Serena's announcement led a lot of people to start planning. If they catered to the needs of the Merman, then they could get sand dollars in return. And with those sand dollars, they could buy all the Sue drops they needed. This applied to all companies, even those that weren't in particular need of Sue drops. After all, they could either trade sand dollars or Sue drops to other companies who wanted them in exchange for something they needed. Many foresaw sand dollars becoming the new trade within Metropolis. And the best way to obtain those sand dollars was coming up soon. The parade welcoming all tourists would be the best chance they had of enticing Merman to spend their sand dollars in their store. After the party, Serena and her Merman were escorted out of the auction house and back to their temporary dwelling a few ways away from Metropolis. They needed sea water to sleep comfortably through the night. The Duchess knew this, so she gave them a horse-drawn carriage to travel anywhere around the surface world as they pleased. "Mistress Serena, looks like your plans worked," said one of her attendants. "Yes," Serena sighed, "but this will be a long and arduous road for them. It won't be easy for them to adjust to the needs and wants of a Merman so easily. I reckon it will take them a few months before any one of them could get enough sand dollars to purchase a single drop of Sue." She really wanted to meet with Michael, but that couldn't happen until she completed all her tasks. If only fairies weren't so rare in the surface world, then maybe they could have gotten the attention of Merman a lot sooner, she mumbled. "We really need to meet with the Pixie Queen if we want to speed this up." Early next morning, when the sun had yet to break the surface of the skies, there was one person in the Daily Metro who was still furiously rechecking the words written in today's newspapers. Kronk, one of the main editors for the paper, made one final check before publishing it. "This is the biggest story of my life," Kronk tiredly said, with bags showing under his eyes. "This has to be perfect." He had rushed out of the auction house as soon as the last game had ended, choosing not to participate in the after-party. Usually, that would have been the perfect opportunity for him to meet incredibly important people, like the leaders of the major factions, and conduct interviews with them regarding their opinions of the auction. Getting a one-on-one interview with the likes of the Duchess, Allaric Goldstone, and the Tower Master was incredibly hard to schedule on a normal day. And the auction's after-party was the only place he could get them all in one place. Yet, he completely disregarded that and headed straight back into the Daily Metro to write his findings about what happened during the auction. Metropolis would wake up to find that it wasn't one of the major factions who earned prestige in yesterday's event. It wasn't even one of the Rising Six. It was Michael Vanderbilt, the owner of the Reborn company. The accomplishments he made in the auctions were legendary. It was unheard of. Even those who witnessed it with their own eyes could hardly believe what they saw. What Michael did during the games was enough for Kronk to write a full front-page article about him. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. No one knew about the exploits of the Reborn company beyond Metropolis. No one knew how massive they were in the lower part of the Queen's region, as well as in the King's region. Writing it all on one front-page article wouldn't be enough. He had to write an entire newspaper journal dedicated to Michael Vanderbilt and the Reborn company. That was why he stayed up all night writing stuff down. Metropolis had to know about Michael. It would be a necessity for them to realize the talent and extraordinary gift that this young man had, or else it would be one of fate's cruelest jokes. Just then, his secretary peeked out from beyond his door. "Sir Kronk, it's ready. We're replicating the newspapers as we speak." Kronk immediately got out of his office and into the printing floor of the Daily Metro. Hundreds upon hundreds of specialized magicians casted their magic as they made copies of his newspaper article one by one. By daybreak today, there would be tens of thousands of copies printed to be sold everywhere in Metropolis. A couple of hours later, Newspaper boys burst out of the Daily Metro carrying baskets full of newspaper bundles. Extra! Extra! Hear all about yesterday's auction right here from the Daily Metro. They knocked on doors, they screamed on the streets, and they did everything they could to get the attention of every single person in Metropolis. Many were intrigued with the results of yesterday's auction, so they quickly bought one copy and read its contents. Immediately, their eyes were drawn on the first page. There was a very accurate drawing of a young boy with golden hair at the very centerpiece of the article. His face practically took up half of the page. HN? Who's this young kid? They didn't have to look further than the title. Michael Vanderbilt. Overwhelming talent. As they read through the contents of the newspaper, they couldn't help but get engrossed with the story that Kronk had painted for them. It depicted the auction's games as it happened from the perspective of the crowd. Kronk was able to capture the shock and surprise that he had into words, allowing the readers to feel the same emotions they felt yesterday. When they got to the part when he defeated Bo, they couldn't believe it. They almost doubted whether they were actually reading a non-fiction article. But when it came out that he survived against the major factions and even won a game against them, they couldn't help but stare at the words in shock. Pedestrians stopped in their tracks, creating traffic behind them. Horse riders got distracted, causing them to go off the roads and into oncoming traffic. Even the normal citizens reading the newspapers at the comfort of their own homes almost had a heart attack after reading about the results. Michael Vanderbilt? I thought the Vanderbilts were done for Metropolis. He's just a 13-year-old kid and he defeated Allaric in a game. That's absurd. He's the one behind those monstrous metal vehicles? As the word began to spread, it wasn't long before people clamored to buy newspapers from every stand in Metropolis. Daily Metro got flooded with a lot of people wanting to get a copy of the newspaper for themselves. And since it was written by Kronk himself, the validity of the article was never in question. Soon, the entirety of Metropolis knew the name Michael Vanderbilt. Not even an hour after newspapers got published, the Reborn headquarters and shopping store in the main street of the Upperwoods district got flooded with thousands of people wanting to see Michael for themselves. Chapter 633. Waking up. Glimpses of memories flashed through Michael's mind. He saw himself facing Allaric, raising his mechatronic hand and stopping him in his tracks. The memories from when he used the fast-forward graphite block was fuzzy. It felt like one of those lucid dreams where it still felt like it was fantasy and reality at the same time. Finally, he opened his eyes and awakened from his deep slumber. He's awake. Guys, don't crowd over him. He's still recovering. Zion, don't mark his face with a pen. His blurry vision slowly turned clearer as he finally saw the people surrounding him. He saw everyone he cared for in front of him. His parents were there, the Dragonborns, the Rebornians. They were all squeezing together around the bed in an attempt to get closer to him. I think it would be best if we left Lord Michael alone to recover, Shiina said, pushing her siblings out of the room. He quickly stopped her. It's all right. I don't mind. I'm feeling a lot better now. That's good, Lilia said, taking him into her arms. You don't know how much we've been worried about you, dear. Then, Fudge jumped out of his shadow and smothered him in his face, making him almost die. Ooh, me too, master. I was so sad thinking you were going to die. Thankfully, Shiina had the good sense to pull Fudge back before he passed out again. Well, I'm sorry for worrying you, buddy, he said, petting Fudge's head. The ninja slime seemed to have been successfully consoled after THS. He then turned to everyone else. How long was I out? You have been unconscious for 3 straight days, Lord Michael. The physicians say that your entire body was pushed to the brink of exhaustion. They even think it's a miracle you're still alive. It made sense. He couldn't borrow that much power from his future self without paying for it. And now, even 3 days later, his body was still in so much pain that he could barely move his body aside from small controlled movements. The culprit for this pain must be none other than the fact that he temporarily aged 5 years in an instant. Growing incredibly fast and regressing just as fast definitely takes a lot of toll on his body. He was like a rubber band that was stretched to its limits. couldn't be helped if his body had little cracks after the stress. Still, he considered this as a massive success. Even if he was reduced to this state, it was all worth it since he was able to exhibit a strength that he wouldn't have been able to do at all. "What happened?" he asked them. He couldn't remember anything after collapsing. "Son, Barnaby was nice enough to get you the first aid you needed. He made sure that you got the best magical physicians to care for you," Bart answered. "Thankfully, they deemed you stable enough to move back into our headquarters after a day." "And the auction?" Gianna smiled. "Don't worry, Lord Michael. Barnaby gave us the 10 sou drops you won in the games." She presented Michael with a giant green vial containing the transparent liquid sou. He almost regained all of his energy back after seeing the sou splash around in the vial. "Thanks," he said, quickly taking the vial. He couldn't wait to upgrade his drone even more. With 10 drops, he could practically get all the upgrades he wanted and more. But before he could do that, he had to settle a lot of things first. Castell approached him on his bed and told him about the current situation of the Reborn company. "These last 3 days have been extremely busy for us, young master. People have been lining up around the streets just to enter our shops. And since Main Street doesn't have a dedicated walkway for pedestrians, most people ended up on the street and disturbing the flow of traffic." Bart also had to chime in. "Your Uncle Max is also experiencing a lot of visitors. Their residence is being hounded by all sorts of people asking to meet with you and discuss business. And no matter how many times they say that you're not there, they just don't believe it." "What happened?" he asked, completely clueless. Then Gianna handed him the newspaper article written about him by Kronk. And after reading through its contents, he became flattered with the way the Daily Metro dedicated an entire newspaper issue just for him. "I guess I won't have any trouble promoting the Reborn company anymore." "That's exactly right, young master. Our problem now is how to capitalize on it. We simply do not have enough capacity to serve such a huge influx of customers. We need to expand our territories." Castell's concerns were definitely valid, but it was something that Michael couldn't really solve right now. "That's definitely one of my goals in the future. I need more territory in Metropolis." He spent the remainder of the day catching up with the others as well as settling Reborn business before Gianna forced everyone to leave the room. The physicians said that it was imperative for him to recover more, even though he had just slept for 3 straight days. Since he wasn't sleepy, he took this time to do something he'd been waiting for. He held his drone in one hand and the bottle of sou in the other. And without hesitation, he quickly poured the viscous liquid onto the drone's frame, which quickly got absorbed into the mithril. His drone soaked up all 10 drops immediately. It even looked hungry for more. And just as he was about to look at the potential upgrades he could purchase, he heard something in his mind. "Good morning, Michael." This was a female voice. It was familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. "ChatJK4? I have now transcended that software and reached version ChatJK5. Please refer to me now as such." He was surprised to hear ChatJK5's voice to be so real. Usually, his personal AI assistant's voice was simply a string of thoughts that popped straight into his mind. And the voice he heard was ambiguous, if not a little feminine. But now, it felt like ChatJK5 really was another entity in his mind. "You sound a lot more human. You like it? I modeled it after famous newscasters back in your previous world. I thought it would make me look a lot more professional." This time, he was truly speechless. ChatJK5 sounded like a real person and not an AI chatbot. "Are you even AI anymore? Have you become sentient?" "I was always sentient, Michael." "Well, whatever you are, I just want to say that I really appreciate your help, ChatJK5. Losing you for what seemed like a while made me realize how important you are. I couldn't have made it this far without you. I am very glad to serve you as your personal AI assistant, Michael. I would like you to know that I am your partner, and we shall work together even in the toughest of battles." Haha, maybe like a partner in crime? "As you wish, smiley face." Just then, a light flashed in the void of his mind. "Kukuku. Do we really need this girl?" Harbinger cackled derisively. Who the foo? Chapter 634. clashing personalities. I apologize for my outburst. ChatJK5 quickly steadied herself after that sudden outburst, returning to that same tone she had back when she was only on the 4th version. Still, the fact that she could even have an emotional outburst like that meant that she was acting more and more human as the software gets more upgraded. ChatJK5, meet Harbinger. Harbinger, meet ChatJK5. Be nice. Okay? Kukuku. I don't need to be nice. My only goal is to become the herald of the future. I don't need pretenses for niceties. And of course, it seemed that Harbinger wasn't going to make this introduction easier. Come on, man. She's been a lot of help before you came along. I probably won't have even come that far without her. Hey? Fine. After reviewing footage from your memory banks, I have now been informed that that entity is none other than your diva and your talent. This means that I'm him, and he's me. So just be a nice little assistant to me as well. Okay? Negative. I have found a loophole within my protocols. Since this entity is purely an essence of your dream, it is not a part of Michael. Therefore, I do not have to serve it. This was a great example of the Theseus ship paradox. Once you change a ship's parts enough times, was the new ship still the same one, or has it now become a different ship entirely? This used to stump philosophers back in his previous world, but it seemed that ChatJK5 solved it in just a few seconds just to spite Harbinger. Can't you guys get along? No. Nah. He could only sigh. These two had the exact opposite personalities possible. One was a strict, precise, and a type A personality who does everything by the rulebooks. The other one goes strictly by vibes and does not care about anything other than the results. Of course, the two were going to clash against each other. Well, you guys better make nice with each other or else I'll be tuning both of you out. The two went silent, seemingly agreeing to a temporary ceasefire. Anyway, I need both of your inputs for my new upgrades to my drone. He immediately looked up the upgrade shop for his drone. Now that he got a windfall of 10 drops, he was in the mood to go shopping. Mithril Artifact. Drone. Spirit of Old. 10 drops. Vision. Camera. Drone Vision. Shared Vision. Magnetic Vision. Weapon. Unity Firearms. Unity Gun. Unity Gun MK. 2. Unity Grenade. Ability. Ability Inventory. Propeller. Stealth. Muffled Propeller. Speed. Double Blades. Frame. Stealth. Camouflage. Invisibility. Phase Through. Defense. Unity Shield. Expansion. Drones. Mini Drone. Drone Hive. Morph. Reduce. Enlarge. Shapeshift. Pocket Dimension. Subspace. The first thing he noticed was that after he bought the invisibility and the mini drone upgrade, he seemed to have unlocked a new option for him to buy. Right after invisibility, the next option was the Phase Through. Phase Through. This upgrade allows the drone to change the density of its individual atoms, letting it phase through normal objects. Cost. 3 drops. This one looks really tempting to buy. Being able to phase through objects would level up his stealth and his reconnaissance to the next level. He could only imagine the kinds of hijinks he could do with his drone once he was able to phase through locked doors like they were an open window. Now, that 3 drops cost would have turned him off, but now he could be considered quite rich in upgrade terms. The next upgrade was regarding his mini drone. It seemed that after the mini drone upgrade, he could now purchase a drone hive. Drone hive. This upgrade allows you to purchase as many mini drones as you want and connect them all to a single neural network. You would be able to control them individually and connectedly as you please. Cost. 2 drops. ChatJK5, do you know how many mini drones I could purchase? Each mini drone costs 1 drop to manufacture, and there is no limit to how many mini drones you could have. Having more drones patrolling the area and targeting different magnetics would allow him to charge up more ability power than normal. Not only that, but if he paired this upgrade with the Unity Gun MK2, Then he could arm all of them with barrels that would shoot lasers at his enemies. And if he had 5, 10, or even 20 mini drones patrolling the area, then he could possibly have all of them shooting one at a time, practically having a non-stop shooting parade. Speaking of batteries, I think upgrading the ability inventory this time also. If he could add another spot for his batteries, then he could possibly charge 2 at the same time with 1 drone. However, that would only be useful if his opponent had a large outburst of AP that he could siphon off of. Otherwise, he'd be better off just charging 1 at a time. Oh, there's another upgrade with the expansion category. It's called Shapeshift. Shapeshift. This upgrade allows the main drone to transform into another shape of the same size. The drone can change its color according to the desired outcome. Cost: 2 drops. This one's good too. There's too many stealth options that I could purchase with this. But before he truly decided on what he was going to purchase, his eyes immediately went over to the last category of the shop. Back then, this option was locked behind A, but now it seems to have been unlocked for some reason. The category was called Pocket Dimension. Is that what I think it is? Subspace. This upgrade creates a pocket dimension within the drone itself. You are able to enter and leave it as you please, as well as other items from the world. Cost: 5 drops. Whoa, 5 drops. This upgrade was very expensive. However, once he thought about it some more, having a pocket dimension within the drone would be actually amazing. If he could control it from the inside, then it would be like his own private jet. He could have his own moving headquarters right inside the drone. Anywhere he was, he could just go and sleep on his own drone. Wait, can other people come to the pocket dimension as well? Yes, Michael. There are no restrictions about who or what can enter the drone's pocket dimension, as long as they fit inside it. This was actually massive. He could have the entirety of the Reborn staff just living in the drone. If he ever planned on doing some dangerous adventures, then he could just bring everyone along and they'd be traveling using the drone. After thinking about the possibilities that he could have with this upgrade, spending 5 drops on it made it a little bit more palatable. I actually really want this new upgrade. He was very tempted to buy it immediately, but it would halve his budget in an instant. What do you think, guys? It's my opinion that you should focus on stealth. Once you prioritize the hiding aspect of the drones, then purchasing the pocket dimension option would be a tremendous benefit. SHH. Stealth? Why are we hiding from enemies? We should be looking for them. Choose the enlarge option. Make you drone as big as possible. Chapter 635 Visitors. ChatJK5's advice was very level-headed. She was considerate of not only him but the Reborn company as well. The pocket dimension and stealth combo was a really good option for the safety of the Reborn company as a whole. But as expected, Harbinger's priority was on Michael fighting stronger opponents for the sake of improving. Sorry, Harbinger, but ChatJK5's right. Now, Harbinger's method had some merit, don't get it wrong. He had proven that with the auction, and how constantly being pushed to the brink of defeat allowed Michael to transcend his normal limits and even beat the ones considered to be the strongest magnetics in Metropolis, even if it was just for a moment. It brought great results, but he didn't want to spend every waking hour of his life searching for the next big opponent like some kind of bloodlust madman. And after what happened with the auction, he was alright with taking it slow for a little while. TSH. Don't take this victory, Harbinger muttered, clicking his tongue. That 1 for me, none for you. Don't get cocky, girl. Michael quickly drowned out the childish remarks that Harbinger and ChatJK5 hurled at each other. They were acting childlike. Which one should I pick? As usual, he was being plagued with lots of choices. There were a lot of upgrades he could go with, but he still wouldn't be satisfied until he got all of them. I guess I don't have to pick it right away. There's no rush. He found that making decisions at the last minute paid off for him. Each upgrade suited different situations, and he wouldn't really be able to predict what situation he'd end up in the future. So, it was best to leave off the decision until he truly needed it. I guess this means I'll have to get more Sue drops, though he wasn't really sure as to how he was going to get more of those. As far as he knew, one could only get them at the deepest depths of the ocean, and the market for them was strictly regulated by the Ocean King. Well, those mermen seem to have a lot of drops. I guess I could ask them for some advice. They sold 15 drops of Sue in the auction quite easily. It was easy to guess that they probably had lots of them still in store. Just then, he heard a knock on the door. "Honey dear, there's some guests for you." He immediately narrowed his eyes. His mother sounded extremely excited, almost giggling. That was never a good sign. And before he could make an excuse about wanting to rest, the door opened as multiple people came inside, ushered by Lilia. He was surprised to see the entirety of the Rising Six entering his room bearing flowers and gift baskets that said, "Recover well." Bo, Rena, Reptar, Erlos, Fim, and Tenzing awkwardly entered the room with smiles on their faces. "Michael, you never told me you had friends like them." He ignored her. "Thanks for coming," he told them. "Of course, man. You'd think we'd be sore losers after you defeated us?" "Haha, definitely not," Reptar said, laughing boisterously, with his spurs clanking in synchronicity with him. "Especially after what you showed in the auction. You definitely showed those major factions who's boss," Erlos said, nodding in respect. Then, Fim and Tenzing, who he had only met once before, sang their praises about his performance in the auction. "I still don't know how you did that. It should have been impossible," Fim said, complimenting him. "Is there a secret? Come on, tell us." Tenzing's words were half a joke and half the truth. He just awkwardly laughed and dismissed their subtle probing. He definitely couldn't tell them that his diva talked to him and showed him how to perform a technique that only nascent spirit cultivators could perform. They wouldn't even believe him. "Enough with the questions. Can't you see he's resting?" Bo said, reprimanding them. "I made you this little cake to help you recover." Bo unveiled a circular cake, with strawberries and red jelly as her decorations. She wrote, "Get well soon, love," and if that wasn't subtle enough, the entire cake was also in the shape of a heart. Her motive for this visit was definitely not for business. I gave you one as well," Rena flusteredly said. "I brought you some cookies." She handed him a few rough-shaped circular cookies wrapped in paper. The food definitely wasn't as pretty as Bo's cake, but the love and care she put on the cookies were definitely abundant. One could tell from the leftover flour on her shirt as well as some taped-up burns on her hands that she tried her best creating those cookies, despite not being a master at it. "Thanks, guys. I really appreciate this." Meanwhile, Lilia eyed Rena and Bo with an intrigued look on her face. The expression she was giving off was definitely an indication that she knew what was going on. "Fufufu. It's only natural that my son captures a few hearts," she said, whispering to herself. Michael actively ignored her. "By the way, Michael, is everything about the article true? Do you really have a nation in the King's region?" Reptar asked. "Yep, it's true," they gasped, taking it all in. They all had their own territories, but it wasn't so big as to call it their own nations. "I heard the stars shine down on it during nighttime. They say it's filled with demi-humans of all kinds. And you have buildings taller than the walls of Metropolis?" They bombarded Michael with questions, making him feel overwhelmed. "Why don't you guys just visit it on your own?" They seemed very interested in that. "I guess I'll have to visit it sometime. I'll just have to settle some stuff in my company, so I can have a half a year's vacation." "Me too. Traveling to the King's region will take at least 3 months. Of course, their concerns could easily be answered. Don't worry. Once I get permission to connect my Golden Road to Metropolis, then I'll be able to roll out my automobiles in the public market." Once he said those words, their eyes immediately widened. Even though they already knew that Michael owned automobiles, the fact that he was promising them that he could have automobiles up in the market in the near future almost broke their minds. "Damn, you're really a big shot outside of Metropolis." "Huh. Wow. I'd be the first one to purchase them if that happens." "And did you say Golden Road?" "As expected. You're a Vanderbilt. You're also competing with the other inheritors." Michael already knew that the cat's out of the bag. He was a Vanderbilt. He actually didn't care that people knew. He just wanted to make sure that people wouldn't treat him as a Vanderbilt first, rather than his own separate entity. Thankfully, he was able to show off in the auction before people found out about his lineage. You should recover fast, Michael. Out of all of us, you have the best chance of reaching the major factions. I saw your lines in your stores. It's very long. It's actually very lucky of you. The parade is coming up, which means you'll have the chance to get sand dollars from the tourists. Chapter 636. Connection. What do you mean? Thankfully, Reptar and the others graciously informed him of what happened in the afterparty of the auction. Really? She's offering 1 drop of Sue for 10,000 sand dollars. This was huge news, especially after he just saw the potential upgrades he could make. Usually, one couldn't even buy a drop of Sue unless they had connections to the Merman. But now, they were given a way to reliably obtain drops of the spirit of old. The priority for the parade just shot up to the top of the list. With the upcoming appearance of the tourists in Metropolis, it became even more apparent how important it was to cater to these newcomers. If he could somehow sell his Reborn products to Merman, then he could earn a steady stream of sand dollars. Don't get excited just yet, Michael. The tourists are notoriously hard to please. Bo warned. We have nothing in common with them. What they want is something completely different than what we offer. It's actually one of the problems that all companies are facing right now, said Erlos. Many of us are spending millions of gold coins hiring Merman specialists who could teach us everything we have to know about them. But still, we found nothing they would want in the surface world. Unless we can bring the ocean to Metropolis, I doubt they'd spend top sand dollar to pay for our products. Fim lamented. Michael nodded, understanding their problems. He, too, knew nothing about Merman aside from the fact that the Ocean King ruled their species. The major factions will have an advantage over us, Rena said. Why do you say that? He asked her. Rena immediately averted his gaze, with a blush forming on her cheeks. Oh, it's because of the pixie dust they got in the auction. For some reason, it seems that the Mermen want to find the fairies. And the major factions are the ones now capable of doing that. I hear they've already sent an expedition party to search near the forests of the southern tip. That's where they're rumored to be, added Tenzing. But of course, no matter how hard they tried to find them, they'd never be found. All fairies migrated to the nation of Reborn and were now guarding over the roller coaster as their own land. What does this Princess Serena want with the fairies? If he could solve that question, he could possibly find a way to obtain sand dollars to fund his need for Sue drops. The Duchess did say that she's going to introduce me to them. I guess I should cash in that favor. After a few more light-hearted conversations with the Rising Six, they eventually said their goodbyes to let him have his rest. And just as Bo was going to leave, she turned around and had something to say to Michael. I actually have some news to tell you. I know I shouldn't tell you, but here it goes. Bo leaned in to whisper to him. I heard that there will be a group of mermen that's going to visit Metropolis soon. They say that they're a merchant of the deep ocean with lots of sand dollars to spend. He looked back at her, surprised that she would tell him about such important information. Why tell me this? Shouldn't you keep it to yourself and reap the rewards? She just smiled and winked at him. It's because you love. This caused utter confusion in his mind. Why? Bo held her hands together and looked up at the ceiling, as if remembering something deep in her memory. I'll never forget the moment when you slammed me against the wall and pinned me on my hands. We were so close, Fufu. I could feel your breath on my neck, and you could feel my pulse getting faster. It's a moment I treasured ever since we fought. He immediately shook his head. That didn't happen. He defeated her, but he never pinned her against the wall. But it seemed that Bo was too far down her own imagination to listen to reason. She was actively trying to rewrite what happened into her own fanfiction. Boubie. She left, still reminiscing about their memories together. She's weird, but thanks to her, I know that there's a merman merchant about to enter Metropolis. I just need to meet up with Princess Serena to find out why they want to meet the fairies. And while he was in the middle of a deep thought, his mother kept looking at him and distracting him. What is it, Mom? Oh, nothing. It's just that I never expected you to be a ladies' man. You have so many women fawning over you. He quickly denied the accusation. What? They're just my friends, Mom. And I barely met them. Lilia held up her hands. Hey, I'm not saying anything. It's just that at the end of the day, you should be loyal to your current girlfriend. Girlfriend? You mean Yuna? She nodded. Yup. How would she feel if she sees you in a harem? Wah! He was speechless. First of all, Yuna was never his girlfriend. And second of all, he didn't have a harem. Just then, the door burst open and someone came flying inside and tackling Michael with a hug. Bestie, you're okay. Braxton was weeping. I thought you were dead. You looked like just one of my piggies who passed away. Seeing this, Lilia shook her head. I don't care about love between two men, but adding another one for your harem? That's a bit. Michael quickly pushed Braxton away from him. It's not like that. And I don't have a harem. After the debacle of visitors, Michael finally had some time to himself. ChatJK5. I completely forgot to ask you, what's your new upgrade? He was very curious to see what kind of thing ChatJK5 now had on its sleeve. It's been a long time since her last upgrade, so he was quite curious as to what changed in her software aside from her human-like personality. My new software is based upon the mysterious tome's information that I was able to decode. What was it? Long story short, it's a thesis about the invisible connection between divas. I was able to leverage what I already know about the world and added the knowledge from the book to create a new technique that would be beneficial to you and other parties. Me and other parties? Yes. You can now partially share the benefits of the system to other parties you have bestowed you gifts onto. Wait, does that mean that I can lend you to my Rebornians? The connection is only limited to those who have a diva of their own. Once they become a magnetic, then they'll be able to connect to our software through the connection between divas and reap limited benefits that you enjoy. Examples include customization of mithril artifacts, search queries, and many more. ChatJK5's upgrade didn't directly benefit him, but it would be a tremendous help to him in the future. He had been planning on making his Dragonborns as magnetics, and this would be the perfect time to do so. Chapter 637. New Currency. Participating in the auction taught him a lot of things, and the most important thing was that he couldn't do it alone. He thought that if he focused on only himself and made himself the strongest magnetic as fast as possible, then he could bring the Reborn company up in rankings very easily. But he was wrong. If it weren't for the Duchess Black Medallion, then he wouldn't have been able to get into the last auction game at all. He would have missed out on all 10 drops. I think it's time for the Dragonborns to become magnetics. As far as he knew, only humans could become magnetics. There had never been a case of demi-humans or any other species to have a diva. But now that he knew that divas were based on a person's talents, then it was safe to say that even the Dragonborns and practically every Rebornian had the chance to become magnetics. In fact, it was a lot easier since they were all natural magnetics like him. If he had enough Godforge pieces, then he could practically turn every Rebornian into a magnetic. And according to ChatJK5, they'd be able to get connected to its network after they do so. That is right. You will be able to monitor their progress and even help them in some way. This may actually be the first good idea you've made, girl. Please do not refer to me as girl. Call me by my name ChatJK5 or not call me at all for that matter. This time, even Harbinger was on board with the idea, which was rare. But it made sense. If all Harbinger wanted to do was to usher the future into the world, then this goal would be easier if he had a lot of helpers with the Dragonborns. The problem is where I'm going to get Godforge pieces. Isn't that easy? Just pick a magnetic off a street, defeat them, and take their Godforge pieces. Easy peasy. Harbinger's suggestion was the easiest. In fact, he had a lot of chances to get Godforge pieces during the auction. But he refused to do so because it would have caused a panic with all of the crowd watching him from above. Can't do that, Harbinger. We have to do this the right way. He wasn't going to steal another person's Godforge abilities unless they were a bad person who didn't deserve them. The good thing is that Godforge pieces aren't like Sudrops. They can be found relatively plenty here in the surface world. I just have to find someone willing enough to sell them to me. He decided that the best person to ask this was the Duchess. So, He quickly teleported to her palace doorstep using the clones that he set up there. As soon as he landed on their territory, he saw two people appear right next to him, who he recognized based on their outfits. "Welcome, Sir Michael." 003 and 004 greeted him with a bow, being as respectful as ever. "Her Highness has been informed of your presence. You can find her in the garden," 004 said. The two of them led the way and he followed suit. And as they walked, 003 spoke up to him about something. "Sir Michael, I do apologize for failing our mission during the game. We promised to get you one drop, and we weren't able to get even a single one. Our sincerest apologies." He wasn't mad at them, of course. "It's fine. I got 10 drops anyway." The two were silent until they finally reached the garden where he saw the Duchess casually sitting at a marble table sipping RD soda, of all things. She had a delighted look on her face as she felt the fizzling sensation as she drank the cola. "Ah, Michael, I hope you've recovered well," she said, continuing to delight in the cup of soda. "Yeah, as good as I could ever be," he replied. She then gave permission to 003 and 004 to leave. "You'll have to excuse their awkwardness. You see, they'd never failed a mission before and still won. They didn't expect you to be able to get your own Su drops while they were unable to." She then peeked at him. "I suppose you can't tell me how you were able to do that, can you?" He just gave her a shrug. "Well, I suppose it doesn't matter. I have learned by now that you don't conform to normal metrics. What may seem impossible to others is simply just a typical thing for you." Beep beep. Just then, the sounds of numerous vehicles and trucks echoed out from beyond the garden. They seemed to be carrying loads of materials given the hum of the engines. "I see you've been making good use of your automobiles," he said to her. "I have. It's a tremendous help as I expected." He was glad to hear that. The more she was enthralled with the automobiles, the more likely she'd approve getting his golden road connected to Metropolis. "Just a quick question. Where can I purchase Godforge pieces?" She stopped sipping her soda and looked at him curiously. "Are you planning on expanding your company's foundation?" "That's good." As expected of the Duchess, she already understood his intentions. "Well, it's not as rare as Su drops, but it's still hard to find a company willing to sell them, especially now when everyone's preparing for the parade. But you can certainly trade for them. I'm sure your visitors already told you, but sand dollars are quickly rising in demand for now. If you can shell out sand dollars, then practically every company will be willing to sell you their excess Godforge pieces in exchange." With the advent of sand dollars, it was now becoming the currency of companies. Priceless items and commodities that couldn't even be purchased with gold coins can now be purchased using sand dollars. If he had enough of them, he could obtain both Godforge pieces and Su drops all at the same time, practically guaranteeing his rise in Diva cultivation stages. "So it just means that I need to get sand dollars from the tourists, right?" "Correct." "Then please introduce me to the Merman," he said, pleading. "I need to know why they want to meet with the fairies. It must have something to do with the Merman and the tourists." The Duchess nodded, already expecting his request. "They've already left Metropolis, but I know where they're going to go. You have to meet with them yourself if you want answers." She then wrote on parchment paper the directions he needed to follow to find the Merman. He studied the map and saw that they had gone further north, somewhere he hadn't been before. They traveled on the northeast of Metropolis and through the... He realized he couldn't understand the writing on the landmark's name. It looked like a bunch of chickens had danced all over it. Duchess? What name is this?" She looked over her own work. "That's the Trugen Strait. The shade on the tree must have made your eyesight a little worse. Haha." He awkwardly laughed with her. He didn't want to be the first one to tell her that her handwriting was worse than a toddler's. Chapter 638. Lots of lines. After his visit with the Duchess, Michael went back to the Upperwoods district to take a look at the current situation of the Reborn company. Others already warned him of a large line that surrounded their store, so he chose to teleport a few streets away just to be safe. And as he landed on his feet, he immediately came across a huge line of people spanning from Main Street all the way over 5 streets ahead. With the way that Main Street was constructed, there were no curbs for people to walk through, so all of them were literally standing in the middle of the street, with carriages and horses crossing the imaginary road boundary just to pass through the people. How many people are there? There's about 1,000 people standing in line at the moment. And judging by the fact that there are more people lining up than there were people getting out, it seems that the number will only continue to grow throughout the day. On average, there were about 3 new people lining up per one person going out of the Reborn department store just on the opposite side of their headquarters. Have you tried the RD soda yet? It's so mind-bogglingly good. No, I haven't. I wanted to try it yesterday, but they already ran out of stock. Last I heard, only the first 1,000 people can get RD soda. So that's why we lined up here even before daybreak. It seemed that RD soda became extremely popular to the masses, just like he expected. After the Bombshell Journal article from the Daily Metro, a lot of people were intrigued by the Reborn company and came to see what they had to offer. And of course, the first thing they saw was the RD soda, which was confirmed to be something that even the royals drank on a day-to-day basis. In fact, one of the trucks that the royal family obtained from the auction was purely dedicated to restocking on soda for the castle. In a world without social media, RD soda became just as much of a sensation as Michael Vanderbilt. Speaking of whom, someone lined up on the streets looked up at Michael with shock. The man looked back down at the newspaper clip in his hands and compared the boy's face to the illustration. It was a perfect replica. "That's Michael Vanderbilt," he screamed, getting everyone's attention. "Whoa, that's him. Hey, please, can I become part of your Reborn company? I also want to become as strong as you. Me first. Me first. I'm sure that I can become a good fighter if you train me." People began crossing the streets haphazardly just to swarm him, making the carriages and horses skid to a stop and creating chaos everywhere. He was the biggest reason as to why the Reborn company was now known throughout all of Metropolis. His show of power, his triumph against the Rising Six and even the major factions became a legendary moment in everyone's memories. It wasn't surprising that almost half of the people lining up on the streets were actually just lining up to get an appointment at the Reborn headquarters. They wanted to get recruited. His legendary feats, as well as his last name, gave a lot of people the impression that he was going to become part of the major factions in the future. It was almost guaranteed at this point. And if they were able to hitch their wagons to him early on, then they could basically secure their futures as well. Many people heard that his greatest fighters were demi-humans, and those who knew anything about magnetics knew that they couldn't have a diva at all. So, they lined up in the hopes that they could become the first magnetics in the Reborn company, and hopefully be bestowed upon a mithril artifact. And just as he was about to be swarmed, a few shadow orcs immediately appeared and created a dark shadow cloud over everyone, disorienting them. A few seconds later, the cloud disappeared, and it seemed, so did Michael. Michael teleported directly to their headquarters with the shadow orcs right beside him. "Thanks, guys." They bowed at him and disappeared into the shadows. Then, he immediately went over to the CEO's office and found Castell looking critically stressed. Her maid Bowtie was completely let loose. This was very much uncharacteristic of the maid CEO. "It's about the crowd, isn't it?" he asked her. Castell looked up at Michael, showing the bags under her eyes. "Yes, young master, we are unable to keep up with the demand of the market. The RD soda is quickly becoming our bestseller, but we can hardly produce 2,000 in a day. Not only that, but our department stores are completely packed. It won't be long before our entire inventory will get sold out. And according to our estimates, our resupply trucks won't get here until a week later. It's a logistical nightmare." He felt really sorry that he had to burden her with all of these responsibilities while he slacked off. "Don't worry too much. I'll have some of our shadow orcs transport inventory directly to Metropolis. And if it gets really dire, I'll do it myself. As for the RD soda, having a limited quantity is actually good for now. It becomes more valuable and more sought after, allowing our brand to become bigger in the eyes of the people. And in the future, we'll just expand our factories. I'll just have a deal with Spice Vice again to have them increase the supply." This seemed to have calmed her down a little bit, which was good. The problem is the space. I need to buy property for a new factory. But that was a problem for another day. For now, he wanted to focus on the Merman. He went over to find Vivi, who were playing around with the rest of the Dragonborns. Lord Michael, was your meeting with the Duchess fruitful? Shiina asked, appearing in front of him with her clipboard and pen in hand. Yep, I know where to go now. Oh, bro Mike, are we going on an adventure? Zion interjected. Kiki, this will be a great training for my ninja skills, Fudge said, acting all edgy and aloof in the corner. Me too me Jew, Vivi said, buzzing around Michael's face. Shiina, of course, reined them in. This is no joking matter. Lord Michael, please tell me if you're going to embark outside of Metropolis. I shall prepare our automobiles at the shortest moment. He looked at them with a smile. Actually, I'm thinking of a different mode of transportation. Of course, he was talking about the pocket dimension upgrade for his drone. This would be the perfect time to buy it. Since he had never been to Trugen Strait before, this meant that he wouldn't be able to use his shadow clones to teleport himself directly over there. But if he could fly there, he could bring his entire room. He quickly went on over to his office, sat down, and closed his eyes. It's upgrading time. Chapter 639. Subspace. The 3D semi-transparent projection of the drone appeared in his mind, rotating in an idle position. He clicked on the pocket dimension category from the upgrade shop and picked the subspace option. Purchasing upgrade. It wasn't long before nanoparticles emerged from the drone surface and began their work on upgrading its new feature. And interestingly enough, the feature that represented this new upgrade was a simple double-door setup that was positioned on the back of the drone's frame. After waiting about 15 minutes, the upgrade was finished. So how does this work? He absent-mindedly touched the double doors on the drone, causing it to recess back into the frame like a button. And in an instant, he felt a pulling force that was reminiscent of the teleporting function that Barnaby had for his auction games. 1 second he was in his room, and the next he was standing in an enclosed metal room with an area about 100 square meters in total with 4-meter-high ceilings. And immediately, the first thing that struck out to him was the fact that surrounding the metal room were these large glass panels that allowed him to see outside of the drone. It felt like he had just been miniaturized inside the main drone itself. This wasn't just a normal pocket dimension. It looked like a futuristic bunker made specifically for military use. At the very front of the drone were these holographic control boxes that looked like it came straight from a sci-fi movie. There were all sorts of graphs like temperature, air pressure, wind, and all sorts of metrics about the current atmosphere. On the center of the room, there was a circular topographical map of where the drone was currently located relative to the rest of the room. He could see his desk, his room, and even the office right next to him where Castell was getting distracted by the troublemakers. They were made out of nanoparticles, making their depiction look very realistic. Then, on the upper corners of the room, he saw another set of holographic control boxes. But that wasn't what caught his eyes. It was the fact that the corners coincided perfectly with the barrels for the Unity gun of the drone. He could see them through the see-through glasses in front of the controls. So this means that the Unity gun can be manually controlled. The fact that the tactical buttons and joysticks were connected to a screen showing a crosshair immediately proved his guess. Now, he didn't immediately get why he would need these kinds of manual controls when he could control them with his own mind. But then, he realized that since this was a pocket dimension, he could bring other people into this subspace and have them control the barrels for him, decreasing his mental load. It's still efficient for me to control the drone myself. But I could definitely see where it would be useful if he had like 20 mini-drones flying all at once. Speaking of the mini-drone, he saw that at the back of the room, there was another control panel that seemed to be directly linked to the mini-drone outside. One could see through its perspective with the 360-degree camera and even the ability thermal vision. This looks more like a ship than a drone. Thankfully, it didn't seem that the subspace ended here. There was another door that led to a new part of the drone's pocket dimension. The door opened up as he sensed his arrival, revealing another door that created an airlock from the control room to the other part of the subspace. Once he entered that, he was face to face with something a little more familiar. There was a large open area that was completely empty, just a white space that was a lot bigger than the control room. This one's completely customizable. If he wanted to build a house, a room, a garden, or anything else, then he could build it here. It was still pretty bare for now, but he could definitely envision a much more filled environment in this pocket dimension. Could be his own little world. The best thing about this was that he was still in control of the drone even while he was in this subspace. While wearing the glasses, he had a full range of vision with his drone. He was practically flying this thing like his own private plane. And to test this out, he went back to the control room and piloted the drone to fly around the Reborn headquarters. First, he went around to the Dragonborns and hovered around them. "Ah, it's Bro Mike's drone," Zion exclaimed. "Whoever gets to it first is the winner." This sparked a rumble within the troublemakers. Vivi buzzed towards the drone, intending to ride it like a cowboy. Of course, he made some evasive maneuvers to dodge her. Fudge jumped and tried to catch him with his shadow, but to no avail. As for Grieve, he did the exact opposite as the other three. He ran in the other direction, shrieking in fear from the drone. "Ah, it's a monster, ho ho ho. Princess Serena, I think it's time that we meet with those major factions. We have to buy the pixie dust from them," said one of the mermen. "We don't have time for that. There are some humans who promise to bring us to the forest where they dwell." There were all kinds of suggestions thrown around to Princess Serena, but she didn't like any of them. Just then, their meeting was interrupted when a courier on horseback approached them. The merman quickly went in a defensive formation around Serena, but she quickly gestured for them to back down once she saw the royal emblem on the courier's uniform. "What is it about?" she asked him. "The Duchess has a message for you," the courier announced. He then gave her a scroll and left as fast as he arrived. Serena excitedly opened the scroll and read its contents. "Michael Vanderbilt knows about the Pixie Queen." Serena couldn't believe her eyes. The boy she was interested in the first place actually had a connection with the Pixie Queen. Her smile was as glowing as the pearls she had on her neck. "Is this true?" Instantly, all of her worries seemed to wash away. If the Duchess was saying that, then it was basically guaranteed. The other mermen were a little bit skeptical, of course. Finding a fairy was already hard enough, but finding the Pixie Queen was almost impossible. They were on the same level as the Ocean King and the Draconic Queen. The chances of some human finding the Pixie Queen's hideout was astronomically low. "This is perfect. We'll be able to tell the other mermen the good news." The reason why they were in the Trugen Strait in the first place was because they had a meeting scheduled with the other merman strait from Atlantis. A few minutes later, the scales on their bodies detected the subtle electromagnetic impulses in the water, alerting them of people coming in their direction. "It's them." Chapter 640, Merman Escort. It wasn't long before another group of mermen burst out of the water. Their scales slowly receded back into their bodies as they made contact with the surface air. Serena gently tapped her hand on the water, creating a small ripple effect that traveled to the newcomers. This was the mermen's way of greeting each other with respect. "Greetings, brothers and sisters," she said. "It is my honor to report to you that we have great news. The Pixie Queen has been found." The mermen looked at her with surprise. "Where is she?" One of the older mermaid asked her. "I have been informed that a human can connect us to the Pixie Queen and the rest of the fairies," she said with excitement. However, it seemed that she was the only one who rejoiced at this news. The new merman, just like her attendants, treated this news with a lot of suspicion and doubt. Who is this human? Is he one of those so-called heavenly knights or mystic masters that the humans are so proud of? "No," she answered plainly. "He's a boy about 13 years old in human terms." As soon as she said that, the merman's eyes turned into one of disappointment and dismay. "Princess, I'm afraid you have been duped," said one of the older mermaids. Fairies, in general, are said to be isolated creatures who dislike mingling with other humans especially, and the Pixie Queen even more so. It would have been more believable if they had said that they had a sighting of a fairy in the forest. But the Pixie Queen? It's nothing but a load of hokum. It was clear from her tone that the respect they had for the Pixie Queen rivaled even that of their own Ocean King. A supreme being like her would not deign to be known by some mere human boy. Imagine if you had said that about our Lord. Would you have found it believable if I said that our Ocean King became friends with a human boy? At this point, Serena couldn't utter a response. She couldn't prove them wrong because she was basing all of this on the words of the Duchess. She hasn't even confirmed if it was true or not. Listen, the Ocean King demands that you should go back to Atlantis and finish your studies. He has given you a task, and you have failed to deliver it. Wait, I still have 2 tide cycles left before the deadline, she appealed. I'm sorry, but this matter has great importance to Merman and all beast folk alike. The Ocean King is going to be giving this responsibility to someone else. Princess Serena became flustered. This was not part of her plans. Give me 1 more day. I can prove that we can talk with the Pixie Queen. Let me go back to Metropolis, she said, slowly walking out of the shallow waters. However, the mermaid's next words stopped her in her tracks. The Ocean King has also decreed that the location of our visit must be changed. We are planning on moving further up the Queen's region, beyond Metropolis. This would mean that the parade that they'd all been preparing for would have been all for nothing. Why? She asked, confused and angry. The Ocean King knew that finding the Pixie Queen was a long shot. So, he had already prepared for another plan in case you were unable to fulfill your duty. Doing the plan without the fairies would be a lot harder, but at least it'll be feasible. Princess Serena stood there in disbelief. She thought she was just here for a routine checkup, but instead, her journey to the surface world would be cut short. Please don't resist, Princess. It's for your own good, said the merman as they approached her with crab pincer shackles. And before they got a hold of her hands, Princess Serena activated her power, controlling the water around her to create a sharp spear point. Glowing letters appeared on the surface of the water sphere detailing the Ocean King's plan to change course. The water spear rotated in the air, aiming directly southwest, towards Metropolis and right to the Duchess' doorstep. This was her last cry for help. As she activated her power, the water spear shot across the air at near instantaneous speed. It's useless, Princess. They'll never catch up, said the older mermaid. Come on. We shall escort the princess back to her castle. The merman successfully put handcuffs on Serena, effectively giving her no chance to escape. With the princess secured, the older mermaid raised her hand in the air and activated her power. The pearl on her necklace glowed as a thin layer of water appeared around their entire group, deflecting light and creating an illusion around them. It was as if they completely disappeared from sight. Even the ripples they made with their movements were invisible. The older mermaid nodded in satisfaction. No human would be able to track them now. After testing out the drone, Michael didn't waste any more time and headed out. He sped northeast at full speed, towards the Trugen Strait. He was still in the comfort of the drone's pocket dimension, which meant that he was able to relax and have a cup of tea while the drone sped away. Of course, to save time and energy, he used the tactics of airplanes and went up to a much higher altitude where the wind resistance was a lot lower, meaning that he could break his top speed. About an hour in, when he started his descent back into the ground, the control room suddenly blared with an alarm. With red lights pulsating around him, he quickly got up and looked at the drone's perspective. There, he was able to see a thin and fast object shooting across the skies and heading straight where he came from. Is a spear made out of water? He then realized why the control room gave out an alarm. The water spear wasn't made out of mana or magic. It was made out of ability power. It was glowing with the same orange light as all the other times he'd seen an ability be used. Huh? Is there a magnetic near here? He quickly traced the water spear back to its origin and was surprised to see Merman swimming waist-deep in water. Not only that, but the orange-haired mermaid looked very familiar. Wait, is she Princess Serena? And the water spear came from her? He was utterly confused as to what he just witnessed. He thought that only magnetics could perform abilities, and only humans could become magnetics. But now, Princess Serena seemed more than capable of producing a power that was the exact same replica of an ability. He had so many questions, but it seemed that now was not the right time to ask them. Judging from the fact that Serena was getting handcuffed, it seemed that it was about time for him to interject. He quickly went over to the exit door on the control room, allowing his body to return back to the normal world. He appeared hovering in the air, looking down at the mermen as they trudged through the water. Excuse me, miss. Need help?